Always live on the free Odyssey app.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The final preseason game for the Bills, won by Buffalo 24-21.
I am ready to see who those final 53 are on this roster as cuts are tomorrow.
Not only the 53-man roster, but what I love, the practice squad.
Running back Jonathan Taylor.
We have a trade to announce.
So Jonathan Taylor could very well be coming to the AFC East.
Mike Danger.
I know we talk a lot of Buffalo Bills here, and I have to say, I want the Buffalo Bills to do well. I want the Buffalo Bills to win. Nothing would make me happier than to see the Buffalo Bills win it all.
Here comes the but.
But yeah.
Gene Battaglia.
It's funny the story or what people think from the outside. Hey, is the window closing on the Buffalo Bills?
No. As long as you have Josh Allen, the window is open.
Correct. But this is the optimist. There's an analogy that while the world has kind of moved on from the Buffalo Bills, this is still a quality football team.
For sure.
We begin with Trey Lance.
Trace Lance.
I'm talking Trace.
USA men's basketball is safely into round 2 of the FIBA World Cup after a 108-91 rout of Greece in Manila this morning. The Americans finished group play against Jordan on Wednesday.
Oh, who cares? Buyer saw that Novak Djokovic should be the favorite to win the U.S. Open.
Buy.
Little League World Series. California wins, beating Curacao 6-5 on Louis Lappy's walk-off homer in the bottom of the 6th.
A final decision on ACC expansion could come in the next few days. There's reportedly continued momentum for adding Stanford, Cal, and SMU.
Victor Hovland won the Tour Championship.
Remember RJ, the man behind the mic.
And Simone Biles won her record 8th U.S. Gymnastics all-around title last night.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan. Rochester.
Welcome on into the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. Wow, I like that we start the week with a bit of breaking news in the Sports Bar.
It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
We'll get to what's going on with the now dissolved Pagula Sports and Entertainment.
Yeah. Okay, didn't expect that happening today. I thought we'd be talking about how does the 53-man roster shape up? Are you happy with the backup quarterback? All that stuff we've been talking about. But
we'll talk about all of that as well. But this is a pretty significant story here for Western New York that broke earlier today. We'll discuss a little bit about that, and we'll do it with some of the best and brightest minds that are out there, guys that are close to the team, guys that are covering the team, including Ryan Talbot from NewYorkUpstate.com, who joins us later on this hour in the Sports Bar.
Yeah, so the Bills still have some work to do. We're 25 hours away from the Bills and every other team being down to that 53-man roster limit. So which Bills did themselves some favors? Which guys are really in some trouble? We'll talk to Ryan Talbot coming up here shortly.
And next hour, Nate Geary, the Buffalo Bills Radio Network and our Odyssey Sports sister station, WGR in Buffalo, will be stopping by.
Yeah, and I think we can also ask Nate his thoughts on PSE dissolving. It's one of those, okay, give me more details. And it was only behind a press release. So we'll talk to Nate about the Buffalo Bills on the field and now off the field with this development today. Nate coming up in 4:25.
We've got a usual fare on tap this afternoon with a round of shots coming up during happy hour after 5. We'll sprinkle in some news and notes from the NFL throughout the course of the afternoon with appetizers and some takes on tap coming up here before 4 o'clock. I'll drink to that. It's a Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line. Use it at will. 866-4FAN 585-866-4326. It's award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub, the new location at 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester, goodsmokebbq.com. We appreciate you checking us out. If you're listening locally at AM 950, 95.7 online, at The Fan Rochester on YouTube and Twitch, in the free-to-download Odyssey app, and on your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan.
Today we had the press release from the Sabres that Terry Pegula is taking over as team president. Now that role had been kind of vacated since Kim Pegula's had her health problems, and he's going to have a right-hand man. John Rothwell's going to handle the business side, and you already know that Kevin Adams is handling the hockey side. So this gives you kind of a future, a blueprint of what the Sabres will be, and two men reporting to Terry Pegula. Kind of makes sense. But then talking in the next sentence in this press release that Pegula Sports and Entertainment, the umbrella company, if you will. And it's not just the Sabres and Bills. They certainly have The Bandits in Buffalo. Oh, yeah, they have the teams we care about here in Rochester. The Amerks, the Nighthawks. They have their recording label. There's a lot of things that are underneath this.
Mm-hmm.
That company is being dissolved. It just states it as fact, which leads you to ask the question, as any curious person would ask, why?
Yeah.
Why? Tell me, what is the reason for this?
My guess is that there are elements of the company that are probably not as profitable or lose money for them. And especially at a time when you know you're going to have to tighten your belt a little bit to pay for the overages of the new palace that you're building, the new Highmark Stadium. I point at the music label immediately because I think to myself, that's a tough nut to crack. It's a tough business to get into and to make money right away. There's just not a lot of money being made by musicians, by artists, by labels, unless you're under this umbrella of a major label. And there's only a handful of those that exist worldwide. It's a global industry where only the big get their beaks wet, right? Everybody else kind of like is fighting for scraps if they're able to make any money at all. So that part of it goes away, I would imagine, and that's probably one less burden that they have to worry about. Maybe something that they're passionate about. They just can't make money with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're onto something there. Like the Bills, were profits from the Buffalo Bills covering up other things that were losing money? Now, for the record, I don't know what the financials are over at the Blue Cross Arena right now with the Amerks and the Nighthawks. Now, you would think, hey, a couple playoff runs, that's pretty good. And you can kind of see, hey, the last few years have been pretty good.
What's their deal with the city? And does the city still own the arena? They bought it from the city. They partners. I'm trying to remember how that all went down. Because there was a while there where the city ran the arena, and it was really, really challenging to do anything in that arena that made money.
Correct. So now it's the Pegula. They don't own the arena, but they just like, here, you run it.
They're running the arena.
They run the arena. So if there's a concert there, the money goes to Pegula. If there concessions, and it took them a while to get the concessions right, some growing pains, but they have it right now. So yes, every dollar that goes in there, signage, concessions, that all is part of the cash flow there for Pegula.
I wonder if that's changed, if it's become easier to make money doing events, hosting games at Blue Cross Arena. If the dissolving of PSE also includes, what's next for how they run Blue Cross Arena, does that change at all?
This from Warren Kozel of the Rochester Americans just asked him, okay, what does this mean? All teams remain under Pegula ownership and will continue to operate as they have their own entities. They're just no longer an umbrella company.
Okay.
So,
but he didn't say anything about the arena.
No.
Because I have a feeling that the arena is an expense that makes it really hard to balance a budget if you're PSE. Now, maybe that's different if you're just overseeing the Amerks and the Bandits and the Nighthawks and everything like they are, and you don't have to worry about it as much. But I always wonder, and I know there's a lot of people, and you can join us at 866-4326. There's a lot of people that when they hear this news go into full-blown insecure panic mode. Mm-hmm. This means they're going to be selling. Guys, they're not going to sell the Bills at a time when the new stadium is about to make them billions more. Billions more. The stadium is an expense, yes, but long-term, the stadium is something that will make them billions. So they're not going to sell the Bills. The Sabres, okay, we can have that discussion. We can discuss whether or not it makes sense for them long-term to own the Sabres. I would say it definitely does if they can get improvements made to the arena, the improvements that they want to make to the arena.
Great. We're going to go through all this now.
You got it.
This where the Bills was this seems more relaxing. I thought we'd have the threat of relocation. I thought we'd have.
But, you could also dismiss what I just said about the Sabres with the knowledge that Terry himself has said, I'm the president of the Buffalo Sabres. Okay, well, if you're the president of the Buffalo Sabres, and we know he's passionate about that team, that's the team that got his foot in the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a hard time believing, especially now at a time when the team looks like they're on the come up, that he would just be like, okay, yeah, we're going to move on. Not worth it. The other stuff, I don't know. I Warren's vote of confidence aside, like I wonder why. I still wonder why. Like, what benefit does it serve? And they certainly don't have to share any of it with us, but does dissolving PSE make it easier down the road for you to hand off one of the organizations, one of the teams to Jessica or to, one of the kids? To, like Kim is continuing to recover. Terry's getting up there. At some point, you imagine they're going to keep it in the family. And when Jessica's done playing tennis, she can be a shrewd business owner who can run one or both of those teams. Is it easier that way than the entire PSE umbrella?
Yeah, it's you hear that, and she wrote it herself, that she wants to kind of follow in her mother's footsteps. So the idea that the Pegulas, are just like they're doing this to cash out, and that's not it. But it certainly is something that you should mention, because what other business can you buy something in the year, what was it, 2014, 9 years later, perhaps quadruple your investment? I'm talking about the Bills. You bought it for a little more than $1 billion. If all of a sudden that team went on the market now, and hey, you have the lease, you have the stadium, you have everything, you're getting more than than the $4 billion. I think
you get the sense that they would do that. I mean, look, I get it. You buy low, you sell high, and if you're talking about investments, that was an investment that they made that they could cash out tomorrow and never have to worry about money ever again for their family, for everybody in their family.
No, for their great grandchildren.
That's
everybody,
right.
Right
beyond generational wealth. They could do that, but do you get the sense that? I mean, that feels foolish. Unless you had somebody in mind who was going to pay a ridiculous amount of money, knowing what the future of both of these organizations could possibly look like.
Well, and that's why if you split them off, and how off danger for as much as these NFL franchises have gone up, wouldn't you think there would be more owners selling in the NFL these days? Like, honestly, like anything that goes up right now, it's because of a trust.
I don't know that they need to sell, because it's not like it's going to go backwards.
No.
It's just going to continue to get bigger and bigger.
It is just an ATM, just like a busted ATM if you're an NFL owner. That's why. Like any team that comes up, the Broncos, well, that was a trust issue. The Seahawks, very shortly, a trust issue again. Washington, well, that's a different story. Like, you don't get ownership changing hands in the NFL. Why? Because it is just so profitable. And for the Pegulas, when that stadium opens, your ship has come in, literally and figuratively. And they'll get their new yacht, I think, at that point.
The super yacht.
The super yacht, yeah.
Don't they have it already? Do they have the super yacht built, or is it in construction? Under construction? Gas for those aren't cheap. You got to keep working. But it's a story worth following, and I think if you have a curious mind, you're exploring all the different reasons why you would do this. And the one element that we didn't dive into is there something more sinister at play here too? Like, there's a lot of these billionaires that let's face it, they're just bad guys. I'm not saying that Terry's a bad guy, but could there be other ramifications, other benefits, other more sinister things at play? And sinister is, I'm using it more aggressively than I probably should.
Yeah, well, let's just say things we don't know about. And here's something I don't know about. Ron Raccuia leaving. What was that all about? And AdPro Sports and that whole entanglement. And wouldn't you think that you could say he's such a hot commodity for getting the state, he's going to have other opportunities, and wouldn't you want him heading up all the sales? And now that you got to cash in, Raccuia's departure is, I'm asking the question, is that in any way related to today's news at all?
Is it easier to ask the state for money for the Buffalo Sabres if it's the Buffalo Sabres and not PSE?
I would like to think that we as voters and we're taxpayers, that we're all kind of smart and figure that's one and the same, but probably that does play a little bit into it too, that there's going to be this giant ask. It's not a new stadium. Honestly, you don't need a new arena, but that arena needs help. Those are the original seats. There are bathrooms on the third floor. There's no hot water. These are basic things.
I was in Buffalo on Friday night, drove by the arena to go to the Outer Harbor for the Jimmy Eat World show.
How was that?
That was fantastic. And it's a reminder that Buffalo did get like this influx of money from the state, and they're using it to renovate the waterway and to make it like a destination.
Buffalo Billion, yeah.
Right. And so you've got this new venue that's being constructed right now. The concert I went to is right next to where the new venue is being constructed, and I feel like they're using this area as like a trial balloon to see like, hey, are people going to be able to get in and out of here quickly? How many people can we actually have? It looks like a CMAC type venue, a shed that's right there on the water, and when it's done, it's going to be mint, man. It's going to look great. But it was a reminder as it was driving by, like, oh, yeah, there's more happening here. There's more money being poured into this city that doesn't necessarily include renovations that need to be made at KeyBank. So I don't know. I mean, when I say that's the extent of when I say sinister, I mean, like, okay, Are they going to ask us for more money for the Sabres and not for PSE? Is it easier to make that ask when you're talking about each entity as its own thing? I don't know that the Pegulas are going to sell. I don't think Terry Pegula wants to sell. He didn't just name himself president of both the Bills and the Sabres so he could be like, all right, well, I'm putting it on the market. I don't see that as an option for them. But I do think it is an interesting story, and I've got a lot of questions that we may never know the answers to.
Our phone number, 866-4FAN, 866-4326. I got a hunch, Danger, that there are good reporters like Tim O'Shine, Tim Graham that, at some point will kind of learn what is the strategy behind this, because they have an agenda here. Mm-hmm. We just don't know what that agenda is. Yeah. So at some point they'll reveal it.
Nobody needs to, they can run their business however they want to run their business. We don't know. We're outsiders, and when the pandemic hit and they gutted the Sabres and the Amerks, we were outraged. How could they do this? This is ridiculous. I would say that both organizations since that date are in much better shape now than they were then. So really, ultimately, hire good people that know what they're doing, that do their job well, and stay out of their way. And I think that they've done that with both the Bills and the Sabres in recent years with Kevin Adams. And hopefully that stays. That you don't want to be the meddlesome. We don't want Terry Pegula to be the meddlesome owner. The meddlesome owner is a problem. Nothing good comes from the owner who wants to be in the media and wants, right? I mean, if you're Jerry Jones and you trade for Trey Lance and you can't even get his name right,
and you didn't even run it by your head coach,
just dumb.
Isn't that great?
Just dumb. That's not what you want. All right, so we're going to talk more Buffalo Bills here in a few with Ryan Talbot, NewYorkUpstate.com, and the Shout podcast. It was a win on Saturday for the Buffalo Bills in Chicago, and after what we saw in Pittsburgh, I think it was a welcome sight to see. Nobody really thought that the Josh Allen and the Bills starters on offense were going to play more than a couple of series. It turned out they only needed one series to show, all right, we're in sync. Penalties are gone, moving the ball effectively, 12 plays, 72 yards, 3 for 3 on third down. I'll say this, as a guy who was watching both sides of the ball when the Bills had the ball, I want to see how the Bears defense looks for my own personal satisfaction. Tremaine Edmonds was out there for part of that first series. And boy, I'm a little bit nervous that Tremaine Edmonds in Chicago looks an awful lot like Tremaine Edmonds that we saw in Buffalo. A guy that can't avoid the screen and can't be where he needs to be in order to make the play. Saw it a couple of times. Bad in coverage.
Well, where you're focused on your favorite team, and look, I watched the TV broadcast. Some of you might have watched it too. And Tasker was pumping the tires a little bit of Dotson. And he did make a nice play. But that doesn't negate all the other stuff. There were 3 plays in particular, wow, what on earth? In the overthrow there by the quarterback from Shepherd. What is his name? Your new backup quarterback.
Why am I blanking on his name right now?
Yeah.
I know that they released P.J. Walker, so this guy's going to have a slot.
It wasn't Peter. Whoever that guy is, like the wide open receiver, and, it misses it. It's the tight end, but that, I think, was Dotson. And Dotson over pursuing on another play. Dotson missing the coverage. So Tyrell Dotson has...
Bagent. Tyson Bagent. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. What school did he go to?
Shepherd.
Where's Shepard? Do we know?
I don't know.
I mean, like,
when you see that crowd,
I don't hate his game. I kind of like his game. I don't like that as I look right now and PJ Walker is released, that Nathan Peterman is listed as second on the Bears depth chart at quarterback. I don't like that.
No, you say Shepherd. I was thinking this has to be some biblical school in the Deep South. Not at all. It's a public school. Shepherd University in Shepherdtown, West Virginia.
Egad. Okay. Small school quarterback. Going to learn from the best. Going to learn from Nathan Peterman. And hopefully you never have to see him if you're a Bear fan.
Peterman hasn't been cut yet, has he?
He's not going to be cut. They cut P.J. Walker.
So they're going to keep 3 then?
Yeah.
Like, wow. Nate Peterman didn't have to play Saturday.
His musk is so strong. It's just intoxicating. If you're a head coach, whether you're Sean McDermott, Matt Eberflus, John Gruden, it doesn't matter. John Gruden, he's won Super Bowls. Couldn't get over the musk of Nathan Peterman. Had to have him on the roster. Had to have him. He's going to make the team. I can't believe it, but he's going to make the team. And he'll be he'll string along the guy from Shepherd, Tyson Bagent. All right, let's get to Ryan Talbot, our buddy from NewYorkUpstate.com. We'll talk more about Saturday's game. We'll get his predictions on the final 53. I've got a prediction for the final 50. A couple of predictions for the final 53. We'll share with I'll Drink to That coming up here before 4 o'clock as well. 866-4FAN if you want to join us. 866-4326. It's the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your favorite team.
Terry Pegula become the president of the Buffalo Sabres in a press release from the team itself. Pegula Sports and Entertainment will be dissolved. An Amerks spokesman telling the Fan Rochester the Amerks and Nighthawks will continue to operate as their own entities. Meanwhile, the preseason is over for the Buffalo Bills. Chris Brown on the final preseason
First
game.
team offense looked sharp. Really encouraged by the way the team ran the football from start to finish in this game. And I was encouraged by the way the defensive backs got hands in passing lanes in the deep end of the defense there. Interception by Jamarcus Ingram late in that game, but had like 6 or 7 pass breakups.
Ryan Talbot, NewYorkUpstate.com, joining us next in the Sports Bar. Red Wings are off tonight. The Yankee affiliate, Scranton, coming in tomorrow. The Yankees are in Detroit tonight. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
They've raised the bar on Rochester Sports Talk. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
All right, let's talk some Buffalo Bills with NewYorkUpstate.com's Ryan Talbot, also co-host of the Shout podcast. Always appreciate you joining us, Ryan. And we look ahead to, 24 and a half hours from now or so, and the Bills will be down, as every NFL team will be down to their final 53. Was there anybody that you thought helped their case to make this team based on their performance on Saturday?
You know, there were some guys that I thought really made a great case for themselves. Jamarcus Ingram's the first guy that comes to mind. I thought he had an outstanding game at cornerback, but it still comes down to the numbers, and it's hard to kind of figure out a way to get him onto this final 53 based on who they already have there, the depth, the talent this team has. So that's going to be something kind of interesting to watch over these next, like you said, 24 hours or so in terms of what the Bills can do at the cornerback position.
Yeah, I'm looking second half, and there's Kyer Elam out there in the second half, Ryan, and I think it's kind of clear that Benford would be ahead of Kyer Elam, and that they like Dane Jackson ahead of Kyer Elam, and I don't think they're going to cut Kyer Elam, but if there were a team calling, your thoughts on Kyer Elam, and are we being too critical on somebody that was drafted in the first round and hasn't come? Does he need a little bit more time, or is this somebody that the Bills actually might have whiffed on here?
No, the longer this goes on, that he cannot win a starting job with this team, I think it's okay for fans to criticize this pick. This is year 2. This was someone that they traded up for. And yes, he was not a fit when they traded up for him in terms of being a press man type of corner. But if you're trading up for a corner in the first round of the draft, you should be sitting there saying, hey, this is someone we can develop, someone that we can really get to play well in zone coverage. And now you're in, you said it, year 2, and he's playing in the second half of preseason games. And he's behind not just, Christian Benford, but Dane Jackson in that race for number 2 cornerback. So you have to start to kind of figure out, what is his best fit? Can you trade him? I mean, you could, but you'd have to be getting a player. I don't think you're going to get anywhere close to a similar type of draft pick, obviously. So it would have to be a player that addresses a need that would be a fit for this team. And when you look at their biggest needs, it's middle linebacker, it's offensive tackle depth. I'm not sure you're going to get someone that would be a fair or even trade for Kyer Elam based on where he was drafted 1 year ago.
Ryan, what's your take on middle linebacker? I mean, we get the sense that it's going to be Tyrell Dodson unless we see some sort of a trade here before tomorrow afternoon. Are you comfortable with him starting week 1 as your middle linebacker?
I think middle linebacker is a mess, to be honest with you. And, right now, by default, he kind of won this job. Bernard missing the entire preseason because of that hamstring injury. A.J. Klein, I thought, had a pretty poor game in the preseason finale, but there was a few plays that Dodson made. He left a lot on the field, in my opinion, though, too, but this is kind of where the team's at. Balen Spector was once in the competition. He's week to week now with the hamstring. The options are slim, so the Bills are either going to have to trade for someone that they feel like they can get up to speed very quickly in this system, or they're going to have to ride it out and hope that the talent around Dodson kind of helps him rise to the occasion.
Yeah, we're talking to Ryan Talbot, NewYorkUpstate.com, also the Shout podcast. So as far as middle linebacker, sticking with it, I'm going to make a statement. Tell me, to what degree you agree with this, Ryan. It wouldn't surprise me if A.J. Klein was cut. It wouldn't surprise me if Balen Spector was cut. It wouldn't surprise me if Tyler Matakevich was cut. To me, if none of these guys, it would surprise me if they were on the street coming up tomorrow.
No, I think that's more than fair. I mean, Medikevich missed a lot of time in terms of training camp coming back, and he's just been a core special teams guy. He's not someone that you've really had to count on to play actual defensive reps. Balen Spector, for as much as I like the athletic traits, he was taken out of the starting competition rather quickly, and now he's week to week. You could always get him onto the initial 53, put him on the IR, and see where you're at linebacker in 4 weeks in terms of deciding whether you want Spector on your 53-man roster. I feel like the Bills are at this point where I would rather see them, get Dorian Williams up to speed on middle linebacker. And I feel bad for the kid because they flip-flop him around from inside to outside, back to outside, and didn't really give him an opportunity in this race. And it's been a pretty underwhelming competition. So I would like to see them at least try to get him up to speed so you can get him on the field sooner rather than later.
What about defensive end, the pass rushers? You got a little bit of a dilemma there with Von Miller and how you want to see him start the season. Is there any surprises to be taken from who they might keep here in the final 53 at defensive end?
Yeah, I still look at this roster and I try to figure out what they're going to do with their former day 2 picks. I thought Boogie Basham and A.J. Epinesa both made a few plays in the final preseason game. I thought Epinesa's 1 sack was because Boogie Basham collapsed the pocket on one side and he had Poona Ford kind of collapsing it from the middle, but he also almost had another sack in the game. Basham's played well. So I could see one of them, though, not being on this roster. I look at Shaq Lawson and I wonder, is there a spot for him? Could they maybe say, well, we like what Lawson did, but here's Kingsley Jonathan, who came on strong at the end of the preseason. Someone that they exposed to waivers last year and he was picked up by the Bears. I think he's going to get claimed by another team if they put him out there again. At some point, the Bills kind of have to turn the page maybe on some of these veterans and maybe go with a youth option that they feel like is developing in a guy like Jonathan. And then obviously you still have the whole decision with Von Miller. And it really does feel like in this case it's going down to the wire. I know Brandon Beane said that last year with Trey White as well. And we know that it took White some time to really come back and play. But I'm looking at this roster and I'm saying maybe you start Von on PUP, you give him those 4 weeks, and you roll with Rousseau and Leonard Floyd as your starters, and then kind of hope that some of these younger guys rise to the occasion.
Ryan Talbot, NewYorkUpstate.com, is our guest here in the Sports Bar. The disclaimer here, I'll just go back to what I was saying last week about the Bills and would they be interested in Jonathan Taylor. And my take on it is Brandon Beane is somebody who's going to call about everyone and everything. That's what good GMs do. So that's the disclaimer. Now you have Trey Lance that's on the market. We knew he was on the market, and apparently the Buffalo Bills were making a call on that. So are we to say that's nothing more than just that's what Brandon Beane does? He's going to call about everyone and everything. Or is it more of an indicator that right now, Ryan, that the Bills are not happy with the backup quarterback position?
I think it's somewhere right in the middle because if you look at Trey Lance's skill set and his talent, it does mirror a little bit of what Josh Allen can do, the big arm and obviously the athleticism. It just didn't work out in San Francisco because of the reps and the injuries that Lance suffered, I think, but it also speaks to the fact that the Bills have been underwhelmed in terms of what they've gotten out of Kyle Allen and Matt Barkley. And I don't mind that he's always in on these players and he's always checking to see what the price tag is. And I'm sure, due diligence purposes, he at least called about Taylor. And I don't think that they're this mystery team that's in on the running back, but I think Brandon Beane kind of always has a hand in everything when he finds out a player is potentially available. But for quarterbacks specifically, I think that I wouldn't be surprised, I guess, if maybe they started with Josh Allen as the only quarterback on the 53. Dallas did that last year with Dak. They could also go with maybe a Case Keenum if he's let go in Houston, or some of these other vets that are suddenly available, like a Colt McCoy.
I'm torn on backup quarterback. We've spent a lot of time talking about it all through the course of the preseason, and it really is a first world problem, right? Like, you want to know that if the worst thing happened to Josh Allen, you get a guy in there that's competent, can move the ball, run the offense. But at the same time, if Josh Allen does what he's being asked to do, really all the backup quarterback needs to do is make sure he's prepared to play week in and week out, given whoever they have on their schedule. So I guess, when we talk about Kyle Allen being, tight with Josh Allen. We talk about a guy like Case Keenum, who picked up this offense last year, who very well may be available to the Buffalo Bills here as soon as tomorrow afternoon. Is it that important? Is it really that important to get somebody that can move the ball, that you have a little bit more ability in? Or is it just more important, Ryan, in your opinion, to have somebody there that's comfortable with Josh Allen, that can get Josh Allen prepared week in and week out?
I think it's more important to have someone that you have faith in the event that Allen is out for 2 to 3 weeks. Now, if Allen suffers some kind of injury at any point in his career that keeps him out long term, this team is in big trouble regardless of who the backup is 9 times out of 10, unless they draft someone, they develop them and bring them along. Case Keenum, Kyle Allen, Matt Barkley, none of these guys are going to be the savior for the Bills if Josh Allen were to miss significant time. But you want someone that you can trust in that, 1, 2, 3 game window where if they're without Josh Allen, can this guy handle the offense, have a command of the offense? If this defense is playing at a high level, can they keep you in this game and, win ugly, as opposed to what they can do with Josh Allen and his arm?
Ryan Talbot, our guest here. Did we see enough out of David Kessenberry to think, okay, he's your swing tackle? Or could they trust Ryan Vandemark? Or is there another option? The backup tackle position, how does that get decided here in the next 24 hours, Ryan?
Yeah, it's interesting. Ryan Vandemark, I think this team is really high on him. I think they really like him as a backup left tackle. But there's a lot to be, desired when he's been in on the right side of this offensive line. Quessenberry, though, played right tackle in the final preseason game, played a little bit on both sides, and I don't feel like he's had a very strong summer either. So, again, I feel like there's an issue here. I feel like they need to bring in at least one tackle. I wouldn't be opposed to them keeping Vandemark based on the youth. Quessenberry can kick inside, but I feel like the inside of the line is already a strength that you don't need to keep Quessenberry along. It's a problem at offensive tackle depth because as much as fans say, well, you have a quality starter in Deion Dawkins. Yes, there's a lot of questions about Spencer Brown, but if one of those guys goes down, you're in a lot of trouble based on who's currently on this roster. I think, like I said, Vandemark can play on one side. I don't have much faith in him yet on the right side. Quessenberry is very hit and miss too. So, you look around and you look at a team like the Patriots who have already traded for 2 offensive linemen in the past 24 hours. I'm not opposed to Buffalo seeing who's out there, seeing who's a fit, and swinging a trade rather than waiting for these cuts to take place where, you can bring in some of these vested veterans without going through the waiver process, and maybe you can put in a claim on a guy and get them. But getting these guys up to speed is a whole nother matter.
Ryan, given that we haven't really seen any sort of ramp up for Von Miller, is it safe to assume he starts the season on the PUP?
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it right now. I know there's been some encouraging signs, wearing some different parts of the uniform, the pads, and wearing the helmet one day at practice. But I think, if anything, the Bills want to make sure that he is truly 100% when it's time to get him onto the field. And while I think he's very close, I would rather have him on that PUP list to start the year, give him 4 weeks to kind of make sure that he is 100% ready to go, open up that, get him ready to play either in week 5, or if you want to kind of ramp him up a week at practice after he comes off the PUP, whatever it is, just kind of get him ready for more meaningful games down the stretch, and then obviously hoping that he's at 100% when it comes playoff time.
And something mentioned on the broadcast that Sean McDermott was not calling the plays on. So what do we know about that? Ryan, is this something? Was this
John Butler?
Yeah. So is this something that actually may happen week 1 against the Jets?
Yeah, so it's interesting. John Butler has some experience calling defense from his career in college and in the pros, and he called the game. And for what it's worth, I thought, 1, he did a good job calling the game defensively. 2, I thought the Bills played a pretty clean game in terms of penalties, in terms of making sure they had all the, enough guys on the field, where in that second preseason game they opened up with only 10 guys on offense, had a lot of issues. And it's too small of a sample size to know if Sean McDermott keeping an eye on both sides of the ball played a role in the Bills playing a much cleaner game in that preseason finale or not. But it's something where down the road, if the Bills do have trouble with penalties, if they're on both sides of the ball, if they're just not looking like themselves, maybe it'll be good for Sean McDermott to know there's someone he can kind of hand the play sheet off to at some point this season. Now, post-game, he kind of said, we'll see in terms of calling the plays in week 1, but then he pulled aside a reporter and said, I'll be calling the plays on the defensive side of the ball in week 1 against the Jets. But we'll see how long this lasts. Like I said, I think Sean McDermott is a very capable head coach. I think he's able to kind of wear multiple hats and pull this off. But I think John Butler passed a big test in this preseason finale in terms of the way he called the plays, the faith that he has, or that Sean McDermott has in him. So something that maybe they could kind of pass the baton in season.
Hey, Ryan, we've spent a lot of time talking about the roster, talking about the cut downs, talking about the game on Saturday. Big news today. PSE dissolving, Terry Pegula becoming president of the Sabres. You're closer to the blast zone than we are. What's your take on this news that broke earlier today?
Yeah, I'm kind of in a wait-and-see mode on it. It's definitely interesting because there was all that one Buffalo talk for so many years, and maybe they do feel like they're at this point now where they can kind of be their own separate entities. The Sabres are definitely up on the upswing. We know how good the Bills are and that they have solid leadership there. I think that the Sabres have righted the ship in that area too. But it definitely raises some eyebrows to be doing this for Pegula to name himself kind of team president of the Sabres. And just kind of, like I said, I'm in wait and see mode, but it was definitely an interesting development here on a Monday morning.
Yeah, they did this for a reason. They did it like what is the agenda here for this? I mean, it could be just as simple as, hey, actually, tax-wise, we save money doing it this way. Or it could be as simple as, hey, it's going to cut expenses. Or it could be, hey, you know what? We asked for all this money under Pegula for the money for the football stadium. Yeah, let's kind of put it under a different name or ask here for the hockey arena here coming up.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a lot of different things. I saw speculation. That's all it is, a speculation. Maybe a minority ownership, like with one of these, like the Sabres or something like that. It's way too early to know exactly what's going to happen here, but by dissolving PSC and making these teams their own separate entities, I'm sure there's a lot of freedom that comes with that. There's, like you said, there could be something to do with the money, with the new stadium. It could have. There's a lot of things to kind of keep an eye on here over the next few weeks and months.
Busy couple of days around the Buffalo Bills. What are you and Matt going to be talking about, Ryan, on the Shout podcast here? What can we check out?
Yeah, so right now, obviously, we're keeping an eye on the 53-man roster tracker. We'll have a practice squad tracker up tomorrow as well once the final roster is set and in place. And then, we're going to start turning the page to the regular season and previewing this Bills matchup with the Jets in Week 1.
Ryan, appreciate you. Enjoy Labor Day, and next time we talk, it'll be the regular season, buddy. Great job by you and Matt and everything you guys do.
Hey, thanks, guys.
You got it. Ryan Talbot, NewYorkUpstate.com is where you can read his work. You can hear him on the Shop podcast with Matt Perino, who joins us tomorrow at this time as well. We'll talk more Buffalo Bills with Perino tomorrow in the Sports Bar.
That's an interesting take. Like, if you wanted to bring on a minority partner for the Buffalo Sabres and it's owned by PSE, you were running through that way, you pretty much would have to do it this way to silo everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Get somebody to become a minority owner in the Sabres to maybe eat some of those losses that they've felt and hope that it, hey, it right now is a time where you have to be feeling optimistic, and it's not like the value of the Sabres or the Bills is going to go down or backwards anytime soon.
No.
They're both on the up.
No, it's it's one of those stories we'll talk about today, and football coming up, it'll fade away a little bit, but
sure.
we'll learn the reasoning behind this at some point.
So we were just spending a lot of time with Ryan talking about the final 53-man roster, any cuts that might happen. Actually, a couple of names that we were just discussing. I want to bring up. I don't know that I would call them surprise cuts, but it'll be telling because it's an organization that's always talked about development, and if it truly is an organization that's all about development, then there's an easy 2 cuts that you would make, and these guys end up on your practice squad. I'll explain exactly what I'm thinking in terms of what the Buffalo Bills can do in that arena. Coming up next with I'll Drink to That.
Yeah, and do I violate one of my own rules? Meaning,
are you hedging?
No, I'm not hedging, but I'm never one of my rules. Hey, this team's not really that good, but you're willing to put money on a team that's not really that good. Comparatively speaking, Yeah, they might be good week one. Our week one spotlight game, the new era beginning down in Washington. Also, because I'm in a feisty mood today, the Super Bowl halftime show. And just my idea. Well, no, like, honestly, like, if you just. Why doesn't Fox get involved here? That's my take.
Okay. I know where you're going to go with this because it's hard not to go this direction when you're talking about who should perform at halftime.
Well,
And I have a theory. That I'll float by you as well, based on who you're going to suggest. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Mike Danger for FanDuel Sportsbook, the official partner of 95.7 The Fan. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. Visit FanDuel.com/Mike and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. 21 plus and physically present in New York. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. NFL Sunday Ticket offer ends 9/18/23. No refunds. Terms and embargoes apply. $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket, not YouTube TV. YouTube TV base plan required to watch YouTube TV. Redemption requires a Google account and current form of payment. Commercial use excluded. As subscription renews, cancel anytime.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your favorite teams from across the country and get the inside scoop from experts.
50 The Fan, Rochester.
Time for our takes on tap in the sports bar. It's a little game we play called I'll Drink to That.
All right, so my week 1 spotlight game. Cardinals at the Commanders. Ugh. Right, Washington giving 7. That gives you an idea how bad the Cardinals are, because it's not like Washington's going to be any good this year.
Right.
You're going to need more than a touchdown to cover in this game? Pop quiz, who likely starts at quarterback for Arizona?
Is it Colt McCoy?
Yeah, they haven't said so, but remember they just brought in Josh Dobbs, so maybe he could get up to speed. Like, good luck with that.
They're both bad.
Like, there is one factor that's going to be different this game than any other game, and in fact, like once in a generation, right? The new owner, the optimism, just kind of the vibe there in Washington. I don't think Washington, again, is any good, but the Cardinals could be the worst. And laying the points here with Washington, in my opinion, is they play.
All right, so you're going to take Washington. What's the spread at?
7. -7.
And it's in Arizona. In Arizona and
no,
Washington? It's in Washington?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why, everybody...
Yeah, I'm with you. I like that. I'm with you on that one.
It screams like, hey, take Arizona with the points. And like, I don't know.
I mean, Washington is a dysfunctional mess that's on the rebound, but they do have some talent on that team. And I think the talent wins out for Washington over Arizona. Let's just see, Gino, how into development the Bills are. I'm going to use the giant exaggerated air quotes. Good gauge of that will be just who they release from their offensive line. Keep an eye on this, because it could be challenging for all of us to kind of tell who's done better at guard and tackle when you look beyond the starting 5. But if all things are equal here, what's the point in holding on to David Kessenberry or Ike Butker at this stage of their careers? Ryan Vandemark played well at left tackle this summer. He made progress at right tackle as recently as Saturday's win in Chicago. Waiving a younger lineman just increases the chance that they're going to get claimed. The same can be said for Alec Anderson, who had some decent reps at center and guard and also saw some right tackle reps against the Bears. Now, while he wasn't great on Saturday, Anderson and Vandemark have the versatility that we know the Bills love. They both kind of redshirted on the Bills practice squad for the entirety of last season. I don't know if they're surprise cuts, but Kessenberry and Butker, they have the best chance of ending up on the Bills practice squad this season.
I think Kessenberry, somewhere else, I'd be okay with. Can you find a player, a veteran that has been cut that will be better than Kessenberry? I agree with you that you got to find Vandemark, and if you expose him to try to get him through the practice squad,
not happening.
No, that won't happen.
Yeah, these guys are young, and they're invested in them. I mean, I know that spending a year on the practice squad doesn't guarantee anything, but you've got guys that you've invested a year in. They're a year more familiar than an outsider that you would want to bring in. So they might not be the best options right this second, but eventually could end up being that swing tackle that we're looking for in terms of who's out there. The versatility is everything for these guys.
Yeah.
The fact that they have that versatility, that you could play Anderson even at center if you needed to, that bodes well for them. I have both of those guys making the final 53 and Kessenberry and Butker getting waived.
We still don't know who's going to be the halftime show for this year's Super Bowl, but we know who it won't be. Your friend Taylor Swift, she says no, she wants to be paid.
Sure.
Right, she doesn't need any additional exposure. She's the hottest ticket right now. And to think the NFL gets artists to do this for free. You don't have to pay. On the back end, you're going to sell albums or tickets or whatever. But here's my question. The Super Bowl's on Fox. Why wouldn't Fox pay Taylor Swift? Fox has the rights. You would think that would be a smart investment to get a record number at halftime. Yeah. Because honestly, who's left?
What's your deal? Why you hung up on Taylor Swift being the only option for Super Bowl's halftime show? I know she is the obvious option, right? But she doesn't have anything to promote. Her world tour is sold out, pal. She doesn't need the Super Bowl. She doesn't need the world's biggest stage. Every time she's on stage, it's the world's biggest stage. Here's my theory. Okay. My working theory. Hear me out on this.
Right.
Do you know the company that helps book the Super Bowl halftime show?
Jay-Z.
It's Jay-Z's company, Rock Nation. Jay-Z's company, Rock Nation, has Rihanna under the umbrella, which is Rihanna was last year. Now, if there was a time for Taylor Swift to do the Super Bowl halftime show, it would have been last year, before the Eras Tour, before the new album release. All of that would have made sense and would have aligned. But they probably, because Jay-Z is involved, what's the other connection between Jay-Z and Taylor Swift? It's Kanye going on stage saying, Beyonce, Jay-Z's wife, had the best music video of all time. Which basically made Taylor Swift's career and made everybody made it from that moment of chaos at the MTV
She
Video
should
Music.
actually write him a thank you note for that.
So my theory is that she was never offered Super Bowl halftime last year. It would have made sense, but she was probably never offered it. And just despite all of that, just went out and sold record amounts of tickets and millions of dollars each night that she's doing her sold out tour. She didn't need the Super Bowl. She's bigger than the Super Bowl right now, and nobody wants to have to overspend for Taylor Swift to do 15 minutes. She'd be doing us a disservice doing 15 minutes during halftime. Like, we want to see the actual full Eras Tour production, and there's no way they could get that in and off that field in time. So that leaves the question, like, who will it be? Your guess is as good as mine, man. I really don't know. But if Jay-Z is involved in booking it, and I will say this, I don't know that I've had a complaint about the Super Bowl halftime show since Rock Nation got involved. I mean, if you look at the last couple, whether it be Rihanna or Dre, whatever it is, like, no, it's been pretty good. Like, I thought the Rihanna halftime show was before Dr. Dre. What was it, Shakira and J-Lo?
Yeah.
Oof. Muy caliente. Those are some honest hips performing at the Super Bowl halftime. So your guess is as good as mine, but I don't think you're ever going to see Taylor. As long as Jay-Z's involved, you're not seeing Taylor Swift performing at the Super Bowl.
Can I ask a quick question to Dr. Danger over here? This is a fantasy scruples question.
Oh.
Because we've all had this situation where you have one owner that dumps, it looks like collusion. I'm going to lose my fantasy baseball league over this collusion. This is a league that's been together for 25 years.
How tight are you with the members of the league? These are all your buddies from Fordham?
Yes and no. I'm really close with like 3 guys, and then it's kind of a collection of whoever. So I'm in first, and one of the guys I'm really close with.
How many teams?
10.
Okay.
The team that is chasing me just completed this trade at the trade deadline. They picked up Blake Snell, Corbin Burns, 2 of the top arms in the National League, Brewers closer Devin Williams, Vlad Guerrero Jr., and TJ Friedl for Josh Bell, Kirby Yates, Joey Meneses, Justin Steele, and Clay Holmes. Justin Steele being the only one in that. So here's my question, Danger, because clearly there's something with collusion that's going on here. This is going to cost me the championship. So do I want to be part of a league that, even though I have a few close friends, that I can't win like this? Now, do you send off the angry email? Do you get the commissioner on the blower? I don't know. What do you do? I've heard stories like this. Yeah. Like when you have one owner saying, okay, here you go. Like, I'm going to give you the 2 of the hottest pitchers. I'm going to give you this premier closer. Oh, and Vlad Guerrero Jr. For what, a case of beer?
If you, and I can't speak to fantasy baseball trade, but there was one year I remember in fantasy football where I was trying to get Adrian Peterson from another manager, and I threw practically my entire roster at him. Greg Jennings and just a handful of other players, and everybody else in the league screamed collusion. I'm like, well, this is what I'm offering him, and I just kind of wore him down to the point where he finally said, I'll get you. I just want you off my back. Fine, take it. I'm not winning anything. Just leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's what's happening here, what this instance is, but what you need to do is you need to get another manager to raise a red flag to the commissioner and say, hey, how is this even a fair deal?
Yeah.
How could this not be seen as anything but collusion? It's so one-sided. And then the commissioner has to do commissioner things and decide, hey, this is something that's not going to happen. I have a suspicion that collusion is here. Hard to prove, but I think if you do it, if you go right to the commissioner, kind of a bitch move.
Yeah.
But if you can get one of your closer friends on your side to go to the commissioner and be like, seriously? we're going to lose Geno from this league because this isn't the way we should be doing things. This trade is completely one-sided.
Yeah,
that's the way
all
I would
we
do
want. Right. So.
And it might just be as simple as losing manager is unloading his roster, even to the team that's going to be competing against you, not because they have a thing against you. But he just got worn down.
He got worn down, right.
Just got worn down. I mean, you're in sales. If you hear no, that's just the one step closer to actually hearing the word yes.
I got outsold on this, basically.
I
mean, I wouldn't want to win a championship because I pilfered somebody else's. Right? Isn't that like you?
Yes.
This is like the worst thing in fantasy sports that could happen. It really is.
Well, to you, you're in first place.
Yeah.
You could still win it all. I mean, you're saying you're basically saying I'm not going to win now because of this.
Picking up 2 big starters and Vlad Jr.
Yeah, it's not great.
No,
but it doesn't mean that you're going to lose. You could still win. I'm saying that without your roster, but yeah, you want to get somebody. You want some sort of an alliance, somebody that can reach out on your behalf, not on your behalf, but just to kind of raise a red flag to the commissioner. Like, really? How's this deal even remotely fair? Because it seems a little one-sided.
Yeah.
And is collusion something we need to talk about?
Well, it kind of makes me sad because it's like, all right, well, this happened, and do I want to be doing this anymore? That ruins a league.
It's tough, yeah. But stay competitive. Have somebody, have your wingman get in there and mix things up a little bit with the commissioner and see what comes of it. If they're as passionate about it as you are, then it should be, something that gets their attention.
I would say you've always been an excellent commissioner. You always kind of like,
I don't do anything. I'm honestly, I don't know that I'm an excellent commissioner because once we get the draft done, I try to stay as hands off as possible. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I'm an excellent commissioner. I could probably do a better job of communicating when things are happening. I try to communicate as best as possible. I know that there might be some people listening going, when are we drafting? When are we drafting? I'm working on that. We're working on that. There's some things happening behind the scenes. Don't worry. If you know, then you know. But yeah, it's something that does take up a lot of time if you let it. And I think that, I'm in enough leagues where there are good commissioners where I can kind of follow their lead and their template. All right, we got to get to Nate Geary here in a couple few. Talk some more Buffalo Bills. We got a little bit of breaking news this afternoon from Buffalo as we hear the news that...
Ow! It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
We hear the news that Terry Pagula has announced that they're dissolving PSE, Pagula Sports and Entertainment.
Why?
A lot of questions.
Yeah.
A lot of questions. We'll get to that and more next. Here in the Sports Bar, Danger and Battaglia on the Fan Rochester.
On Track Auto Sales is the home of guaranteed auto financing. On Track.
update.
Terry Pegula will become the president of the Buffalo Sabres, but perhaps burying the lead in the press release. Pegula Sports and Entertainment will be dissolved. An Amerks spokesman telling the Fan Rochester the Amerks and Nighthawks will continue to operate as their own entities. Buffalo Bills wrapping up the preseason. Steve Tasker thinks that Cam Lewis has made the team.
He's hard to get off the roster because of his versatility and his ability to play at a certain level at a bunch of different spots. He may not be all-world or all-pro at any spot, but man, oh man, the dude can fill in everywhere. And you won't worry about it. He's going to be in the right spot. He's going to have the right responsibility. He's a good football player.
Nate Geary from the Buffalo Bills Radio Network will join us later this hour. Wings are off tonight. Yankees are in Detroit. Gene Battaglia in the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The final preseason game for the Bills, won by Buffalo 24-21.
I am ready to see who those final 53 are on this roster as cuts are tomorrow.
Not only the 53-man roster, but what I love, the practice squad.
Running back Jonathan Taylor.
We have a trade to announce.
So Jonathan Taylor could very well be coming to the AFC East.
Mike Danger.
I know we talk a lot of Buffalo Bills here, and I have to say, I want the Buffalo Bills to do well. I want the Buffalo Bills to win. Nothing would make me happier than to see the Buffalo Bills win it all.
Here comes the but.
But yeah.
Gene Battaglia.
It's funny, the story or what people think from the outside. Like, hey, is the window closing on the Buffalo Bills?
No. As long as you have Josh Allen, the window is open.
Correct. But this is the optimist. There's an analogy that while the world has kind of moved on from the Buffalo Bills, this is still a quality football team.
For sure.
We begin with Trey Lance.
Trace Lance.
I'm talking Trace.
USA men's basketball is safely into round 2 of the FIBA World Cup after a 108-91 rout of Greece in Manila this morning. The Americans finished group play against Jordan on Wednesday.
Oh, who cares?
Buyer saw that Novak Djokovic should be the favorite to win the U.S. Open.
Bye.
Little League World Series, California wins beating Curacao 6-5 on Louis Lappy's walk-off homer in the bottom of the 6th.
A final decision on ACC expansion could come in the next few days. There's reportedly continued momentum for adding Stanford, Cal, and SMU.
Victor Hovland won the Tour Championship.
Remember RJ, the man behind the mic.
And Simone Biles won her record 8th U.S. Gymnastics all-around title last night.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
It's easy to grin when your ship has come in and you've got the stock market beat. But a man who's worthwhile is a man who can smile when his pants are too tight in the seat. Do the honest, Pookie. Wanted to just give a shout out to our buddy John, Yacht Rock John, who listens to the Sports Bar. You know what, dude? I went and saw his band Yacht Club play last night, yesterday, during the day, late afternoon at Whiskey River over there on River Street by in Charlotte. And man, it was fun. It was just fun. I brought my little one with me. She's a yacht rock savant. She knows every song, title, and artist. She's into Kenny Loggins and Toto Africa and all. Like we play a game to see who can name the yacht rock song faster, and she whips her old man into submission. So, John, great job. You and the band keeping it tight. I know they got a little bit of a delayed start yesterday afternoon, some technical issues, but once they got on stage and they started rocking, I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are having fun. It was a blast.
Any deep cuts, or was it just all the faves there?
The one that I heard that I'm like, all right, not a deep cut, clearly not a deep cut, but debatable as to whether or not you would call it yacht rock. Can I get a verdict on Just the Way You Are by Billy Joel?
I am a big fan of Billy Joel, as you know. That is not yacht rock.
I mean,
yacht rock.
They performed it, and they performed it well, and they had people, dancing. They invited people to dance to Just the Way You Are, slow dance. It's a romantic song. Like if you're there with your significant other, you're probably and you dance to that song. Yeah, you're probably going to set a pretty good tone for the rest of your night. But when I heard it, I'm like, is it yacht rock? I don't know. But they did Rosanna. They did Africa by Toto. A couple of my favorites right there. We had, when you hear Ride, Captain, Ride. How do you not smile?
Upon the mystery
ship. It's just ridiculous. When you hear the song live, it's just ridiculous. I was smiling from ear to ear. Had a blast. Man, it was so much fun. So, John, great job to you, buddy. We'll look forward to seeing you on our Football Fridays here during the course of the regular season, as we know you stopped by. But that was a lot of fun. Really appreciated John having us out there at Whiskey River.
Yeah, that's where I was needling one of our coworkers on.
I shouldn't call him John, by the way, either. His stage name.
Oh.
Captain Obvious. Captain Obvious. Captain
Is
Obvious.
he the bass player?
He's the bass player.
Okay.
Captain Obvious on bass, and he was fantastic. Really, really excited to see him yesterday. That was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yacht Club. No, yes, Yacht Club is the band. If you ever check them out, that's a lot of fun.
That was the last weekend of summer. People say it's Labor Day weekend. Like, no, at Labor Day weekend we're just kind of chilling and getting ready and doing all that stuff.
Yeah. Hey, we were just talking, and we'll get to Nate Gary here. We appreciate you checking us out, however you're doing it. 95.7 FM, AM 950, The Fan Rochester on YouTube and Twitch. We sound our best in the free-to-download Odyssey app or your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. Nate Gary joining us here in about 10 minutes from the Buffalo Bills Radio Network and WGR. We were just wondering, who's going to start in that game for the Cardinals against Washington? It isn't going to be Colt McCoy. They released Colt McCoy this afternoon.
What?
Yes.
Is it going to go with Josh Dobbs?
I mean,
is there somebody else? What?
I think that's the plan. I think that's the plan. I mean, Dobbs and fifth-round pick Clayton Tune are the top two quarterbacks on the Cardinals' depth chart. It's a tank.
Scott Pianowski putting in Washington looks like a boutique survivor pick in week 1. Oh, no. Now we got to rethink everything here.
Wow, it's not bad.
Oh,
I mean, Josh Dobbs, from what we've seen of him in the NFL, not great. Not really up to snuff when you're talking about...
Who the hell is Clayton Tune?
Not great, Bob. All right, so McCoy is out in Arizona. That's a little bit of update. That makes your pick a little bit more savory, I think. Yeah, lay the points, take Washington.
Yeah, now that line's going to go up, right?
Right, you would think.
Yeah.
You would think. The Buffalo Bills have to get down. All NFL teams have to get down now. Less than 24 hours to 53. Their final 53-man roster. We did get news of some cuts from the Buffalo Bills. They've moved on from defensive tackle Cortez Broughton, wide receiver Isaiah Coulter, safety Jared Maiden, tackle Garrett McGinn, wide receiver Desmond Patman, tight end Jace Sternberger had that fumble week 1 of the preseason. Linebacker Deshaun White have all been released. And Shane Ray, nice little camp story. They've released him off of injured reserve. So when he returns ready to play, he'll be playing with another team if he gets signed from another team. He hasn't played since 2018.
So they bring him again like last week. They have to be telling him, look, he has to know, look, you're going to be cut. We'll play you a little bit, and this is going to help us, save some reps for somebody else.
Sure.
Like he was here 6 days. Like, what are we doing?
Right, and you're probably going to see Ty Johnson, who was just signed last week. He'll probably be on the block as well. Like, if you're asking me who the Bills are keeping at running back, it's pretty simple to me. It's 4 running backs. It's Harris, it's Murray, it's of course Cook, and then you keep Gilliam as your fullback.
It's funny how there's been these stories, going back to the beginning of Fisher where they flicker for a little bit, like Balin Spector, and then no, and now he's squarely on the bubble.
Sure.
And a player that wasn't even at the beginning, like, oh my gosh, Andy Isabella has a real shot. No.
Not happening.
No, not happening.
Not happening.
No.
We'll get that final 53, and we'll keep letting you know if we hear of any other players that are being released by the Buffalo Bills. But I just thought it was funny that we were just talking about who's starting at quarterback for Arizona. Well, it's got to be Colt McCoy. Nope, not Colt McCoy. Will not be Colt McCoy against Washington. It'll be Josh Dobbs. Yeesh. Just plug your nose if you're a Cardinals fan and try to grin and bear it through the rest of the time that Kyle Murray is recovering from that ACL. All right, we got Nate Gary joining us next in the Sports Bar, and we're going to talk not just about the game on Saturday, not just about the final 53-man projection for the Buffalo Bills, but also let's get Nate's take on this news of the day here from Terry Pegula that PSE is dissolving, and he is now the president of the Buffalo Sabres. As he's already named himself president of the Buffalo Bills. So now you have two separate entities in the Bills and the Sabres that aren't under the umbrella of Pegula Sports and Entertainment anymore.
Yeah, they did this for a reason. Let's just go over the checklist here. Which just could be the number one reason. Business-wise, makes sense for tax, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You're going to do something here. You want to bring in a minority partner for the Buffalo Sabres. I would listen to that. Perhaps it's something bigger. Honestly, they did this for a reason. What is the agenda here? And maybe Nate's got a theory he can throw at us.
Gino, it is tailgate season.
It is. And you know what also it is? It is also fantasy football season.
Yes, it is.
And you don't have to wait to the end of the year because, trust me, I've done this before. I just defeated Mike Danger.
How did you defeat me?
Well, there was one year where I, in the regular season, I sent the picture of the executive producer and I, we were the assassins, and you called us corny, or I think it was a worse word than that.
It was pretty corny.
Yeah, it was pretty corny. So the point is that you can celebrate fantasy football wins too. Tailgating season's here. Make a stop at Mad Hatter's Hideaway for your tobacco needs. Voted Rochester's best once again. Mad Hatter's has over 300 varieties of cigars for you to choose from. Fire up that Victory Cigar. 2 locations, Culver Road in Rondequoit and 535 Westridge Road. MadHattersHideaway.com.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your favorite teams from across the country.
Pull up a stool and join us. 585-866-4FAN. 866-432-6. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Less than 24 hours for the Buffalo Bills to get down to their final 53-man roster. Nate Geary, the Buffalo Bills Radio Network, also WGR in Buffalo, joining us in the Sports Bar. Nate, is there a player on this roster that you scratch your head and wonder, how are they on this roster, that will end up being on this roster come tomorrow?
It's tough because, I think the last couple of weeks, last couple of times I've been on with you guys, we've been kind of like zeroing in on some of these roster position battles, cornerback 2, wide receiver. And I look at it and I look across the roster and I say, I'm kind of looking at this as there isn't to me one guy standing out or like one position group where you're like, yeah, this is set in stone. It feels like there's a couple of positions. Defensive end, to me, is one interesting one right now that I talked during pregame. Feels like we haven't really talked enough about. Like Kingsley Jonathan's a name to me where it's like this is going to be a guy that's difficult to cut based on the performance he's had during the preseason. Like he has looked dominant at times. And then you look at the wide receiver room. I think much has been made of Andy Isabella and whether Khalil Shakir finds his way off the roster. But I just don't think that a 5th round pick is going to, be essentially passed over for a street free agent, even if he does maybe give you some more special teams value. And then, like the running back position, I thought Evan did himself some favors on Saturday with that touchdown run and the overall performance he had during that game. Ryan Vandermark, another guy that I think is likely going to find himself in a roster spot. David Edwards looked really good on Saturday as well. So, I don't know, I look across the roster and I say, hey, 50, it feels like 53 is pretty easy to get to. And I don't think that there's going to be a lot of laboring for 52 and 53. I don't know about you guys, but it sort of feels like we've had this roster sort of set in place. And there was 1 or 2 opportunities for guys to make a move. And I'm not sure that anyone really did. And I think we're sort of at the point where this is a team that's kind of been set in stone since sometime after April.
Yeah, there is one player that I think is going to be on the final 53, but it certainly did not have a great first year. And second camp, we're seeing him out there in the second half of the third preseason game. Talking about Kaiir Elam. Where are we at with Kaiir Elam? And would Brandon Beane, if the phone rang, actually move him for a mid-round pick, would you say?
It's tough. I think that you could be in two schools here. Is that you're done. It's very obvious that I think Christian Benford's going to be the guy, and he's a 6th-round pick from the same draft that is basically taken over really from the end of training camp last year when Tre'Davious White was out and Dane Jackson had solidified that interim cornerback 1 role. And then Christian Benford essentially takes over as cornerback 2, beating out the 1st-round pick, and then injury happens. It gives Kaiir some opportunity to get some playing time. But I think it's pretty firmly looked at and believed at this point that Kaiir Elam is the team's 4th corner. And being a former 1st-round pick, a guy that you traded up for, I think that's got to be pretty disappointing if you're Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. And I think you look at it, again, the two schools of thought is that you cut bait and you move on because I think you've made your decision to move forward with Christian Benford, or you keep him, and you keep him. The reason being is for the depth, right? Last year you had injuries to Christian Benford early in the season. He did not end up finishing the season. And then you also had injuries to Dane Jackson that forced Kaiir Elam into action late in the year. And I think you want to be in a position where if for whatever reason you lose 1 or 2 guys at the cornerback position, that you can turn to a former 1st-round pick and a guy that maybe you're going to give an opportunity to get those game snaps. You know what it sort of reminds me of, guys? It kind of gives me like defensive version vibes of what just happened in San Francisco with Trey Lance, right? Like a guy that didn't play a ton of football, that needs experience and needs opportunities to play, to develop. And right now, I just don't think this roster has an opportunity for Kaiir to develop on the fly. And I think it's pretty obvious that the practice habits or the practice performance isn't there. And it's sort of forcing the hand of this coaching staff to give it to a guy like Christian Benford, who is more consistent week in, week out, day in, day out in the film room and, in the practice facility. And then it translates into games. And, I think right now, I think we all liked what we saw from Kaiir Elam in game situations towards the end of last year, but there's something amiss when it gets to the practice field. And, whether that's fair or unfair or ridiculous or not, this is a decision that I think puts them kind of square in the focus of, does trading him, and what could you get for Kyer Elam because I don't believe this franchise, where it stands right now, gets a lot of value for going out there and going into 4th or 5th round pick for Kyer Elam, especially when you consider if there's an injury. But I do think if you can go acquire a Malcolm Rodriguez from Detroit, or a guy that could maybe potentially come in here and start at middle linebacker or push Spencer Brown, that's maybe a player for player trade I'd be more willing to have a conversation about. But for me, a mid-round draft pick for a team and a franchise with 10 of them next year doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Nate, I was paying attention to the reps that Tremaine Edmonds was getting on the defensive side of the ball for Chicago, and I'm happy to report to Bills fans, Tremaine Edmonds looks like Tremaine Edmonds. He was out of place on a couple of plays. He got caught up in a pick and wasn't able to make a play on another play that led to a Bills third down conversion. I guess my question is unsavory as the idea of Tyrell Dodson being your week 1 starting middle linebacker, do you potentially have an upgrade just by default?
I don't think so. I mean, listen, did they save a lot of money by not going out and signing him for $18 million and competing with Chicago? Absolutely. You might have upgraded in terms of your ability to be more flexible with the roster and go out and sign Ned Oliver to an extension that maybe you wouldn't have done if Tremaine Edmonds had been re-signed. But I think overall it's been kind of a train wreck, the position right now. And $18 million for the level-headed, ability to have some stability at the position that I think is an important position. I'm not sure that we can just agree that it's an upgrade by not having him here, strictly because, yes, of course, for all the things that he potentially lacks and sometimes finds himself out of position, I think he makes up for with how offenses have to game plan around his length in the passing game. And let's be honest, guys, there's no team more equipped to go at the weaknesses of Tremaine Edmonds than the Buffalo Bills. There's no team that knows innately the weaknesses and the flaws in Tremaine Edmonds' game than the Bills and Josh Allen and Ken Dorsey. So I still think that for the Chicago Bears with TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, I mean, that's a really good 1-2 punch at the middle linebacker position for them. And, that defense did not look great against the Bills starters, but I do think that Tremaine Edmonds is a really nice pickup for Chicago. And I do think the more we get into the season without a true answer at the position of middle linebacker, I think the more people are going to maybe appreciate what they had in Tremaine Edmonds when they're rotating guys in and out. Because I do think even if Dotson is the guy, which I'm not convinced he is, I think you're going to see a lot of A.J. Klein. I think you're going to see a lot of Terrell Bernard. I think you're going to see a lot of rotating in and out, a lot like we saw last year with the cornerback 2 position. So it's tough because, of course, in a preseason game, you kind of see him out of position. You see all the sort of buzzwords people complain when they had to watch Tremaine Edmonds for the last 5 years. But I also think the presence alone and maybe the knowing you have a guy that's a top 7, top 8 player at his position. I think there's real value to that.
Nate Gary, Buffalo Bills Radio Network, is our guest here in the Sports Bar. So if there's one thing about Brandon Beane I think we can all kind of agree on, if there is a player available that Brandon Beane's just going to talk to him, use that, like go back to OBJ. Or I use this in the context of it wouldn't surprise me if Brandon Beane actually talked to the representation, to Jonathan Taylor. Not that it means anything. So we have this report that Brandon Beane was maybe kind of searching around. Go back to Trey Lance here. Is that just Brandon Beane being Brandon Beane? I'm going to talk to everyone and everything, or is there actually a concern here about the backup quarterback position on this team, Nate?
I think you can look at it and say there might be a concern about the backup quarterback position, but I think 29 NFL teams have concerns about their backup quarterback position. I think it's a lot like offensive linemen. Even teams with starting quarterbacks they might even feel good with probably don't feel great about because they don't. I mean, how many teams truly have a franchise quarterback? Is it single digits? Is it 10, 12, 15 teams at the very most with true franchise quarterbacks that they wouldn't take the first opportunity to upgrade as soon as they were given it? So I think that it's a difficult conversation because I think the Bills don't really have a backup quarterback with a similar skill set to Josh Allen. And I think if you look at Trey Lance, you look at a guy who was talked about as being this draft or that the 2021 draft's version of Josh Allen. And, tread carefully anytime you're trying to have that conversation because I think he's a unicorn and a guy that, it's going to be tough to compare to, but it's going to continue to be compared to year after year, draft after draft. Whatever big guy with a big arm that can run is going to be, and that it lacks, true real playing experience in the high level Division I football. All of those people will be, in one way or another compared to Josh Allen. So I think for me, he offered you an opportunity at a pretty low price because of the guarantees already paid out by San Francisco to upgrade the quarterback room behind Josh Allen, but provide some continuity in terms of playing style. Where if Josh Allen were to miss an extended period of time, you feel like Trey Lance could come in and do all the things that Josh Allen can do. Maybe not at the same level, obviously. He's a top 3 quarterback in the league. But be able to make the throws and be able to have the athleticism in the run game and some of the read option and RPO stuff that you see Josh do, that you don't feel like you have to change it like you're probably going to have to do with Kyle Allen or Matt Barkley. So I think that's maybe more so what it represented than anything else. But I still kind of sit here and I am wondering, like, you know, what value does Trey Lance even have for the Dallas Cowboys right now? I mean, I think everybody agrees what the guy needs is playing time. And no team that could really offer him playing time seemingly was interested in signing him or trading for him. So really interesting situation. I mean, it really looks pretty bad on San Francisco that they basically moved on for a mid-round pick for a guy that they gave up 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick for. But it is interesting to me that the Bills were sort of listed as a team interested in the negotiation process, so much so that it said they offered a 5th-round pick and were basically beat out by the Dallas Cowboys, who gave up a 4th in return. So really interesting overall. But, yeah, I think it speaks to me a little bit that if, you know, Brandon Beane has a first-round grade or a second-round grade on Trey Lance and 2 years later has an opportunity to acquire him for a 4th or 5th-round pick, I think you have that conversation and you look to upgrade at positions where you can upgrade, especially if they're lower-priced ones like the backup quarterback position.
Nate, I'm curious to see who ends up on this offensive line because for all the talk of development, you have a couple of young players and you have a couple of veteran players that are fighting for roster spots. And if you keep David Kessenberry and Ike Butker over guys like Ryan Vandermark and Alec Anderson, you're kind of showing that the veteran familiarity and guys that have been here longer mean more than the development of 2 guys that spent the entirety of last season on the practice squad, have the versatility that you also say you're looking for. How do you think this all plays out here when you get behind the starting 5 on the offensive line for the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. But I think the one part that you mentioned there is Quessenberry does have some position flexibility. He played guard at times last year, but this is a team right now that I think needs a true tackle. I think they've got plenty of options on the interior of this offensive line. Obviously, Ryan Bates can play all positions, and I think I really liked what I saw from David Edwards, who I think he can play both guard positions. And then, you look at what Alec Anderson can do. I think he can play both guard positions and even dabbled a little bit on Saturday at right tackle.
Yeah.
I think the position flexibility is going to matter a lot to who ultimately makes the team. And I think they know what they have in David Quessenberry. I do think that there is a level of development still needed for a guy like Alec Anderson, a guy like Ryan Vandermark. But I look at both of those and I see more ceiling opportunity and maybe even a little bit more position flexibility. So I think for me, the young guys to me are going to get the nod over the veterans simply because and I do wonder, does this maybe open an opportunity for Brandon Beane to move on from one of these veteran tackles or one of these veteran players? But I think ultimately where I stand is keep the young guys, they offer that position flexibility, and I think they offer maybe a little bit of a higher ceiling than what you're going to have in, David Quessenberry and a guy like Ike Butker, who I like a lot, but, I think really lost a step after that Achilles injury 2 years ago and maybe hasn't really been the same player. And I think for me, I'd much rather see, Alec Anderson, who has that position flexibility that I don't think maybe Ike has to move to tackle if need be.
Nate, do the Bills, do Von Miller, do they both, if he's not 100% ready to go, do they have the discipline to say, it's important as this opening game is against the Jets, we're not going to do this here? What's your read on it? Because it's certainly looking like Von will start on PUP, correct?
I think my read on the situation is right around week 8 is when I would expect Von Miller to be back. And I think that's sort of been everyone's working theory for the last several months, dating back to the, maybe after the draft. But I think the ultimate insurance policy ended up being the Bills going out and signing Leonard Floyd. And I don't want to say that was sort of the signal or the smoke flare to say like, hey, we don't think Von Miller's going to be ready to start the season. We better have a veteran that we can turn to. We know has experience. We know has had success in the league. But I ultimately think that there's no benefit in rushing Von Miller back. You signed him last year to be a guy that could make plays for you in December and January, and he didn't even make it to that. So I think for me, making sure that he is as close to 100% by the end of December going into January, I think there might not be a more important thing for this team to do. So for me, I think you sacrifice the first 8 games and you look what happens and what the schedule looks like after the bye week. Man, there's no better time to be ramping up Von Miller than after the bye week when you're facing teams like, You've got the Jets. You've got Kansas City. You've got the Chargers. You've got Dallas. You've got a pretty loaded back end of the schedule. Have Von Miller ramping up during that period and not over the first 8 weeks of the season. I know he's only technically going to miss 4 games, but he can't start practicing until week 5 then. And I don't like the idea of getting him on the practice field for a week and then putting him in game situations. I think there's going to be a legitimate ramp-up period that will take place after he's available and off the PUP list. And then you activate him and you let him roll. But I've sort of been circling week 8 really all offseason.
Do you see any surprises on the defensive line outside of Miller there? I mean, when you look at the names that we're discussing here, a defensive end and A.J. Epineza, Shaq Lawson, Boogie Basham, they all feel like they're making this team. But what about interior defensive linemen? What about the guys like Tim Settle, Jordan Phillips coming back from that shoulder? These guys are safe, in your opinion, Nate?
Yeah, I think they're going to go with 5 interior defensive linemen and 5 edge players, so 10 overall defensive linemen. They like to use the rotation a lot. I think Poona Ford maybe didn't have the impact that I thought he would have early in preseason, but I do think he's an interesting player and an interesting piece right behind Daquan Jones. I think Ed Oliver had a really good start to the preseason game on Saturday. I'm really interested to see what Ed Oliver can do with a healthy defensive line. And when Von Miller comes back too, I think that there's something to be said about him not getting a lot of snaps with Rousseau and Miller on the edge. That teams can really kind of zero in on and make sure they're double teaming it on Oliver. And I think when Rousseau's healthy and when Von Miller's healthy, it makes things really difficult for opposing offensive coordinators and offensive lines to sort of zero in on Ed Oliver in the interior. So I think for me, I think you've got 10 defensive linemen. Who that 5th edge player is for now while Von's on the PUP list, I think it's going to be a really difficult decision between A.J. Epinesa and Boogie Basham when Von Miller comes back. Because ultimately, I think A.J. Epinesa every step of the way has shown that he's put himself in a better position than Boogie Basham has. And Boogie Basham, to me, doesn't bring a lot to the table in terms of pass rush moves, athleticism. He's just kind of a motor guy. And, well, if you've got a quarterback that stays in the pocket long enough, he'll find you. Where at least I think I started to see some of that development last season from A.J. Epinesa, a guy who's got a little bit more juice. He's longer. And I think is maybe the overall better player. So I think for me, that maybe the real interesting part of the conversation doesn't start until Von Miller's activated and who that defensive end is going to be the odd man out, because I do think that'll end up being Boogie Basham.
Talking to Nate Geary, Buffalo Bills Radio Network. Nate, we had this story. I think it's a big story. The Sabres naming Terry Pegula the team president. It's his team, but in that press release, they mentioned that they're dissolving Pegula Sports in Entertainment, and it is one of those stories like, all right, well, tell me more. What's the reason behind it? So, Nate, it's just there's endless possibilities. What do you make of this news today? The PSC is going to be no more.
It's not super surprising. I think most of the outside business ventures have been relative flops. Whether it's the restaurant side of the business, the quote entertainment side of the business just has not really. And listen, COVID hurt a lot of their endeavors, their business endeavors, and their business ideas. But ultimately, separating the sort of the powers that be, I think is interesting, and it doesn't really feel like it's all that separate, right? Because Terry and their COO are still going to be president and COO of each organization, the top 2 teams, the Bills and Sabres. So what level of separation really exists, I think, really just kind of stems from they're no longer going to be under the PSE umbrella. So I think for me, it's news, but I'm just not really sure I know what the news is. And I sort of feel this way about everything that's gone on, because the problem, I guess my biggest problem that I have with, the Sabres going with Terry Pegula as the president, which I think brings a level of continuity. It was Kim before, it's Terry now. I don't think there's a huge difference in that, but Terry doesn't really speak to the media very often. And I think if you're the leader of a franchise now, a sports franchise, and you're not just the owner, but now you're the president, I think there's an expectation that you've got to speak to the media and that there's going to be opportunities for you to address the media and talk about the team and talk about the state of the franchise, whether it's business or just, on ice or whatever it may be. That to me is maybe the more puzzling part. Is I do think you want somebody to be the leader of your franchise that's going to be out there. It's going to be front and center. But I also don't know how important that move is for the Sabres. Kevin Adams is running everything hockey related. So this feels more like a president of business operations than it does really Terry's going to be making hockey decisions now. I think this franchise really trusts Kevin. I think Kevin's shown that he can be trusted, make the right personnel moves, make the right front office moves. The people that he surrounded him with are really good. They're very smart people. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the news is other than I'm not surprised that that Terry named himself the president. I think I'm just more surprised that there wasn't more to the story than PSC is dissolving and, Terry Pegula is taking over as president. I feel like that was kind of always going to happen. So I am more interested on maybe the what's next than I am of what happened today.
Nate, we're getting closer to kickoff. We'll have an opportunity to talk to you throughout the course of the season. Appreciate all the work you're doing on the Buffalo Bills Radio Network and WGR. And as always, appreciate your time this afternoon, brother.
Thanks, fellas. Enjoy the rest of your week.
You got it. Nate Geary, WGR in Buffalo. Also the Buffalo Bills Radio Network pre- and post-game.
Yeah. What is, in your opinion, the toughest decision they're going through right now?
I think it's that offensive line. When you've got a guy like Ike Butker, who you've shown some loyalty to. He's been with the team for a few years, and he's trying to battle back. And he's just not the same player that he was before that Achilles injury, as Nate referred to. Or a guy like David Quessenberry, another guy who's been with the team for the last few years, who's done everything you've asked him to do. And now you're saying, hey, well, we're going to expose you guys. And if all things work out, you can be one of our veterans on the practice squad when it's all said and done.
I think it's the other side of the ball. Having Von Miller go on PUP, and again, that's just speculation, but if that happens, all right, that means you can keep an Epineza and a Boogie Basham.
And a Shaq Lawson.
That's where I'm like, do they go with Kingsley Jonathan?
No. I think you can keep 5, right? If you go 10 defensive linemen, 5 defensive ends, 5 on the interior.
So you have Lawson over Jonathan.
I do. Yeah.
So no surprises on the defensive line.
Not really. No. I think that, I know some people want to say Jordan Phillips is probably suspect. I think Jordan Phillips is on this team.
I think he's safe too.
I think Tim Settle is on this team.
I'm not so sure about Settle.
It turned out okay yesterday.
What about Poona
Saturday?
Ford?
Poona Ford's on the team.
Okay.
Yeah, Poona Ford's on the team. I think the guys that you're exposing would be your Eli Ankou at defensive tackle and your Kingsley Jonathan at defensive end. And if they can somehow sneak through, then who knows? Maybe you have them on your practice squad. Kingsley Jonathan would be great on the practice squad. I think, I don't know, Eli Ankou, I don't know if he's even going to be good enough to make the practice squad or if somebody else picks him up. But Kingsley Jonathan, if he's available, yeah, I think you'd take him on the practice squad.
I'm thinking Jonathan over Shaq Lawson at this point. If you get an eye toward the future.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Well, then why say everybody there are no injuries when Von Miller does come back? Well,
now you have to make a tough decision.
You make a tough decision.
Now you have to make a tough decision. Now you have to look at, all right, who's been the game day inactive? Has there been any game day inactives? And a wide receiver too. Like Khalil Shakir is making the team, but I don't know that Khalil Shakir is active on game day.
No. No, because you're Sherfield and Hardy.
Yeah,
you'll activate 5, and then it'll be it.
Right,
and so Shakir's going to have to work hard to get back into this lineup.
That's right. Great stuff from Nate Geary as well. Appreciate him stopping by. Some other news and notes from around the NFL here quickly before we get to happy hour.
Oh, we have this breaking news, Danger. We'll save it for when we get back. Who's starting at quarterback for Arizona?
Yeah,
James Gannon gives us his answer on that.
Yeah.
Ow! Hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
We'll have some breaking news. We'll tell you this. It's not Colt McCoy.
No.
We do have the names of the players that have been already moved on from the Buffalo Bills. That includes defensive tackle Cortez Broughton, wide receiver Isaiah Coulter, safety Jared Maiden, tackle Garrett McGinn, wide receiver Desmond Patman, tight end Jace Sternberger, got to hold on to the rock kid, linebacker Deshaun White. And Shane Ray was released off of injured reserve as well. If he's going to actually make a full comeback to the NFL, it'll be with a team other than the Buffalo Bills. From over the weekend, Gino, I don't know if you saw Josh Jacobs obviously got signed with the Raiders. In a nice spot here now because he's got a base this season of 11.8. It's a one-year deal. If the Raiders were to exercise the tag again next year, puts Jacobs actually in a really good spot to make over $14 million under the franchise tag in 2024. And of course, if they don't tag him again, he becomes a free agent, in which case he'll probably make more than $14 million in guarantees with whatever team decides to sign him.
Just kind of an odd sight that he's coming back in, and it's pictures of him hugging the GM out there. Where all right, I guess it was all business. We're all fine.
Business.
Yeah, business is business. It wasn't a surprise, but it's official now down in Houston, where C.J. Stroud will start Week 1 for the Texans in Baltimore. He's been getting most of the work with the first-string offense through training camp of the preseason.
Yeah, and that's our chalk pick for Survivor Week 1, right?
That is the chalk one. But now, it just coincidentally, earlier in the show, where I'm picking one game a day here, is leading up to Week 1. All right, not a sexy matchup, but interesting that Washington, a team we're not all high on, but they're giving up 7 points Week 1 to who? To Arizona. Okay, well, remember, who's that quarterback? It's going to be Colt McCoy. No, it's not.
Yeah.
They released Colt McCoy today. Yeah. Jonathan Gannon, head coach of the Cardinals, says they're not going to disclose who's going to be the starting quarterback Week 1.
Oh, so sneaky.
Yeah.
One guy we know that will be looking for work, and we know I have some Penn State fans that listen to the Sports Bar. Trace McSorley didn't make the Patriots. And that's a guy that's bounced. Speaking of Arizona, was in Arizona last year at this time. He's bounced around quite a bit since his time at Happy Valley. Bailey Zappi behind Mac Jones, and the guy that I liked from the preseason, Malik Cunningham, playmaker. Start him, you cowards. He could actually end up being an option for the Patriots as well. And there is a trade and a little bit of hot kicker talk to get to here.
Oh, yeah. Rough preseason for fourth-round pick Cade York, 2022 fourth-round pick. The Browns have acquired Dustin Hopkins, a former Buffalo Bill, from the Chargers. Cleveland will send L.A. a 2025 seventh-round pick to complete the trade. York will be waived, and Hopkins, who lost the Chargers' kicking job to Cameron Dicker.
Dicker, the kicker. So hot.
Yeah, Hopkins will be the Browns kicker immediately, while, yes, Cameron Dicker is your new kicker.
Oof.
In
I'm
LA.
telling you, knowing that Cameron Dicker is making the rounds there in L.A., I might need a cigarette after that hot kicker talk, Gino. Oof. Cleveland, you got your guy. Congratulations. Let's get to happy hour next in the Sports Bar. We've got a round of shots, and we have time for your phone calls if you want to join us. The Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line at 866-4FAN. Best barbecue in town, that's easy. Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub in East Rochester. Award-winning barbecue, lunch, dinner, catering, and must-try weekday specials like Taco Tuesday, Wacky Wing Wednesday. Tuesdays, you got Good Smoke's chicken, pork, or beef gorditas for only $3. Wacky Wing Wednesdays, buy one, get one free wings. Good Smoke's giant signature wings for buy one, get one free on all 6 or 12 wing dine-in orders. On top of that, Good Smoke's Super Happy Hour features buy one, get one draft beers and $3 well drinks weekdays from 2 to 6. Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub, 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your favorite
Sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
As we await the final cuts from the Buffalo Bills, 4 o'clock tomorrow across the league, comes this news today that Terry Pegula is now the president of the Sabres. In the release, it's mentioned that Pegula Sports and Entertainment will be dissolved. An Amerks spokesman telling the Fan Rochester that the Amerks and Nighthawks will continue to operate as their own entities. As for the cut down for the Buffalo Bills, Steve Tasker today on One Bills Live thinks that Cam Lewis is on the team.
He's hard to get off the roster because of his versatility and his ability to play at a certain level at a bunch of different spots. He may not be all-world or all-pro at any spot, but man, oh man, the dude can fill in everywhere. And you won't worry about it. He's going to be in the right spot. He's going to have the right responsibility. He's a good football player.
Rochester Red Wings are off tonight. Scranton Wilkes-Barre coming to town tomorrow. Gene Battaglia in the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The final preseason game for the Bills, won by Buffalo 24-21.
I am ready to see who those final 53 are on this roster as cuts are tomorrow.
Not only the 53-man roster, but what I love, the practice squad.
Running back Jonathan Taylor.
We have a trade to announce.
So Jonathan Taylor could very well be coming to the AFC East.
Mike Danger.
I know we talk a lot of Buffalo Bills here, and I have to say, I want the Buffalo Bills to do well. I want the Buffalo Bills to win. Nothing would make me happier than to see the Buffalo Bills win it all.
Here comes the but.
But yeah.
Gene Battaglia.
It's funny the story or what people think from the outside. Like, hey, is the window closing on the Buffalo Bills?
No. As long as you have Josh Allen, the window is open.
Correct. But this is the optimist. There's an analogy that while the world has kind of moved on from the Buffalo Bills, this is still a quality football team.
For sure.
We begin with Trey Lance.
Trace Lance.
I'm talking Trace.
USA men's basketball is safely into round 2 of the FIBA World Cup. After a 108-91 rout of Greece in Manila this morning, the Americans finished group play against Jordan on Wednesday.
Oh, who cares?
Buyer saw that Novak Djokovic should be the favorite to win the U.S. Open.
Bye.
Little League World Series, California wins beating Curacao 6-5 on Louis Lappy's walk-off homer in the bottom of the 6th.
A final decision on ACC expansion could come in the next few days. There's reportedly continued momentum for adding Stanford, Cal, and SMU.
Victor Hovland won the Tour Championship.
Remember RJ, the man behind the mic.
And Simone Biles won her record 8th U.S. Gymnastics all-around title last night.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Welcome to Happy Hour. I got to say, Gino, it was nice and efficient. My preseason football viewing this weekend, I got to watch, instead of 2 games, I'm watching one. I'm watching the Bills and the Bears, and I'm happy to report that Tremaine Edmonds, all of the things that Bills fans hated about Tremaine Edmonds still exist. Okay? Because I'm watching intently on the defensive side of the ball for the Bears. Like, all right, Edmonds is out there. Let's see if he can make any plays. No, he will get tangled up in a pick. He will be somewhere he's not supposed to be, out of position, not able to make the big plays. He was out there very long, and he certainly wasn't impactful when he was out there. Now, we asked Nate last hour, Nate Geary, who joined us, is it possible that the Bills is this an addition by subtraction situation? That, Tremaine Edmonds not being on this roster, are you actually better by default just not having him there? And I get what Nate is saying. Like, look, physically, you have to game plan for that guy because of his size, because of his wingspan, and his ability to get from sideline to sideline. But man, I just couldn't help but think to myself, this guy, I'm nervous. As a Bears fan, I'm nervous. Like, you invested a lot of money in your middle linebacker, and you've got a couple of guys in Edwards and Edmonds there, and specifically with Edmonds, I don't know, man. I don't know. The Bills might be okay at linebacker because what I saw from Edmonds, like, oh yeah, that's the stuff that everybody hated when he was in Buffalo.
Well, Nate's answer was good. Like, letting go of Edmonds, it's not great, but it does give you that flexibility against the cap. You don't have Leonard Floyd here. You may not have the 2 wide receivers here.
Right.
You have the opportunity to do some other things. And No, like right now, whatever. I take for as much as you're saying it's all true. Watching not 1, not 2, but 3 plays for Dotson. My favorite one was your backup quarterback from Shepherd, and who knew that football powerhouse Shepherd, wide open. Here's his tight end, and Dotson missing the assignment there, or Dotson missing another assignment in coverage, or Dotson over pursuing on one tackle. Yeah, Bernard, look, maybe he's going to end up being the guy. Maybe he gets back and healthy, but those hamstrings kind of are tough to shake off. It's a problem that the Bills never solved this year. So just get ready for this donut offense, meaning there's a big hole right there in the middle of it.
Great conversation with Nate Geary. Also, Ryan Talbot from NewYorkUpstate.com joined us in the 3 o'clock hour. You can get either of those conversations now in the free-to-download Odyssey app or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Just search out the Sports Bar. That includes Apple Podcasts. That includes Spotify. And we appreciate you listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia here on The Fan. 95.7 FM, AM 950. We've got the video stream up at The Fan Rochester on YouTube and on Twitch. You can also hear us on your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. The big bit of news from earlier today, Gino, was really less about the cuts and the move to trim the roster down to 53. Terry Pegula becoming the president of the Buffalo Sabres and announcing that PSE is dissolving.
Yeah, it is something, is it not? Like, wait a second here. The big umbrella company that everything gets funneled through. And this is one of those, it's not a story yet, just kind of they're telling you a fact. So what is the story here? That's what we're all kind of wondering. Is this just done for tax purposes? Is it done just to make the businesses more efficient? I'm looking right now at the soon-to-be gone Pegula Sports and Entertainment website. And if you want to follow along, if you're in front of a monitor, PSE Entertainment. And right there, they show you all the different properties or things that they own, right? Well, the sports teams, Bills, Sabres, Amerks, Nighthawks, Bandits. Ad Pro Sports. Okay, well, they got to update the website there because that's gone. The Harbor Center. Blue Cross Arena they list as their properties, and the KeyBank Center. And the Marriott that's there. And I think, I can't even tell. And Black River Entertainment.
Black River is the record label.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Highmark Stadium they list. Okay, well, I know Ad Pro is gone. And Black River, has that been successful up to this point?
I would say that that's one thing that's probably hemorrhaging money for them. I don't know how much money they're putting in to the record label, but it's hard to make money in the music industry unless you're a part of one of the big global brands, Universal Music, Sony Music, Warner Music. Outside of those three, really, really challenging to make hay.
And if you're not familiar with Harbor Center, it's this cool development project that went up across the street where they have the the high-rise Marriott. They have the hockey arena, which is like on the 9th floor, I think it is, in a parking garage. So, well, if you're the owners of that, are you selling that? Are you shifting it over to the Sabres? What does it mean for the Amerks and Nighthawks, too? Well, for now, they're going to operate as their own entities. But here's my question, too. Okay, we know the Bills make money hand over fist. Pretty sure the Sabres haven't made money, just judging by a lot of things. And certainly when you're in minor league sports, it's tough to make money if you're the Amerks and Nighthawks. Certainly we saw some great things with the Amerks going on their deep playoff runs, and I like what they're doing with the Nighthawks. But for now, everything's status quo. But should we be concerned, actually, that these guys are their own entity and, okay, well, you're losing money here and you're losing money there. What are we doing here?
I don't think that if you're a paranoid fan thinking this means that they're going to sell, I don't see any way that happens. I mean, if you're the Pegulas, and even if you dissolve PSE, you still have the Bills, the Sabres, the Amerks, the Nighthawks, the Bandits. And minor league teams aside, when you just look at the Bills and the Sabres, it's not like the value of those two properties are going to do anything but go up. They're going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to be valuable. It gets a little hairy when you talk about the minor league teams. Can you be profitable with those teams? Can any losses you might have with the Rochester teams be made up for in the gains you have with the Bandits if you sell out KeyBank for a Bandits game? You mentioned the Sabres.
not making money. Fairly safe to say that given the attendance woes that they've had the last few years, that they're probably not making the kind of money that they projected to be making. A lot of that has to do with the pandemic, but more than that has to do with just a bad product on the ice, which is getting better. So you can kind of project that that's going to get better. But I think it was Ryan Talbot who joined us earlier who made a good point. Like, if you're looking to bring on minority ownership of any of these teams, it's easier to do that when you don't have the giant conglomerate. You can just piece it away. Here's a minor ownership of the Buffalo Sabres for X, insert billionaire here who wants to be a part of it. I also think that at some point, I don't know when, and I'm not wishing for this or rushing to this, but this is a family business, and these teams will remain in the family. Like, the clock has got to be ticking. Like, when Jessie Pegula is done playing tennis, she's immediately in the front office, right? She comes right into the front office and runs things.
She's Jeannie Buss, basically. She is going to be the one. Although we've heard the son, and I don't even know his name. He's trying to learn the football side of it too, and heck, that is the definition of a family business here. I feel like there's more to the story with AdPro Sports and Ron Raccuia. I feel like that's the piece here. Like, what is that? What is that all about? Was there something off there?
Well, tomorrow, the good news is tomorrow at 4:25, we'll be talking to the guy who I think has done the best job of kind of unearthing everything behind that dismissal. Tim Graham of The Athletic will join us tomorrow at 4:25.
Yeah, he's been right in the middle of PSE. To the fact where, remember he had the flow chart? Somebody leaked that to him. Okay, things we want to focus on. Bills, Sabres, the entertainment business, maintaining Pegula family lifestyle.
The super yacht. Yeah.
Ooh,
And that was at a time when people were losing their jobs and furloughed.
Bad. No, tone deaf.
Yeah. Well, billionaires are aliens after all.
Look, it could be nothing. Nate Geary kind of said so much. You want to silo these things. It could be more effective to kind of run and just get rid of things that don't work anymore. We almost forget, oh my gosh, yeah, they own 716. They were in the restaurant business too, and they realized that's not working. So it's a press release without a press conference to ask questions, and the question we want to know is why? Where are you going with all this? There's another theory here too, if I may float it past everybody. Well, we just got done with the big ask for the state, right? Yay, the football stadium's going up 2026. We can go watch Buffalo Bills football. That hockey arena needs work. You don't need to build a new hockey arena, but the fact that you have the original seats, the fact that you have bathrooms that don't have hot water, you don't have modern amenities, you're walking through the concourse, it feels like you're walking through the year 1998 with the color scheme and everything. Honestly. You're going to have to make the ask. It seems silly, but would there be those legislature people that would be like, oh, Pegula Sports and Entertainment, you just asked for this? No way. Oh, wait a second. Now it's the Sabres asking for this. Okay, sure.
I don't want to dismiss any of that. I really don't, because is it easier to ask for money from the state if you're the Buffalo Sabres and not Pegula Sports and Entertainment? Maybe. Also, you're also tightening your belt even more if you're Terry and Kim Pegula, knowing that the stadium isn't going to actually cost what you thought the stadium was going to cost. You had to account for that. You had to know if it was 1.4, it's probably going to end up being closer to $2 billion. And maybe this helps them figure that part of it out as well, keep things separate so that you're not pulling from one organization to help fund the other organization. I could imagine being, a minority partner in the Sabres and being a part of the group that renovates that arena. But I can imagine that it would be kind of easy for PSE to say, well, we could take a little bit from over here because we're successful here and add that money over here. This kind of eliminates the idea that they would do that.
And maybe that's just the way he needs it organized. Maybe that's the way he needs to compartmentalize everything in order to keep them all separate. Just blow up PSE and let everything exist in its own entity, which sounds like they're going to do with the Amerks, Blue Cross Arena, and, of course, the Bills and the Sabres. But we'll have Tim Graham on with us because I think you're right. The Rakuya thing is a little fishy. All that guy did was get a record amount of public money for your new stadium. And then he's out just a few short months later. Why? And does it have anything to do with today's announcement?
Yeah.
Are the two connected?
Yeah. What is the story here? And the curious thing is, this came across, they're so good, Danger, now, where they maybe before they weren't, as far as buttoning up things, not leaking it. I haven't heard or read anywhere like what this is all about. Lance Lysowski, Buffalo News, when this came out, he called the news today surprising. I would say it's surprising too. Maybe from the inside, not so much, but definitely from the outside.
Now, Chris, one of our regulars on on X, at the fan Rochester, points out that Black River Entertainment does have a star in Kelsey Ballerini. And you're right, Kelsey Ballerini is a country star. But
I'll take your word for it.
Saying that the label has done well for being independent, that's where I would challenge you a little bit, because doing well for a label means you've got multiple stars, you've got multiple streams of income, and you've got multiple touring artists. And having just one is, while it's nice for an independent label, you need multiple stars in order to really turn a profit when you're a record label. The Bills got the win on Saturday in Chicago to wrap up their preseason campaign. I think everybody is enthusiastic about what they saw from the first team offense and the first team defense. We didn't think that we would see a lot of them. We turned out we saw one series, but it was an efficient series, a 12-play touchdown drive for Josh Allen and company, and the defense holding the Bears offense to 2 straight 3-and-outs before some of the starters gave way to second stringers. So now we're left with who makes this team and who doesn't. Who's on the final 53, which we'll know by this time tomorrow, and who will be looking for work or hoping to land on the Bills' practice squad.
I don't think there's going to be any surprises, right? Like we can debate who is going to be the defensive end that's going to be on the outs. Is it going to be Shaq Lawson? Will it be Kingsley Jonathan? What about the swing tackle position? David Kessenberry, does his versatility mean that you're going to try to sneak through Vandermark again to the practice squad, or does Vandermark, has he shown you enough? Andy Isabella, I think, is not on this team. What is there like? Okay, maybe Tyler Matakevich isn't on this team. He literally wasn't healthy. I don't think, Danger, there's going to be any surprises. I think if there is something curious, and maybe it's more of a long-term question, is we really haven't had like a first-round pick that by the Buffalo Bills, and like talking about Kaiir Elam now, where he's going to be your fourth corner on this depth chart, if at that, because clearly Christian Benford had a nice game. He's going to be your starter, and they trust Dane Jackson. Dane Jackson can tackle. Kaiir Elam being a first-round pick you actually traded up for 2 years ago, that just seems... Or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm not giving this enough time, but I think the corner position, you should be able to tell really quick, hey, do you have it or not? And entering year number 2, Kaiir Elam, I think they keep on the 53 just to save face here.
Yeah, he's staying on the team. I think you carry 6 at corner with Trey White, Taron Johnson as your nickel corner. Saran Neal, I think, is on this team. He provides a lot in special teams and can also, spell Taron Johnson when needed. Benford, Dane Jackson, and then Kaiir Elam is on this team. I think they hold on to him for depth rather than move on from him. And they've needed that depth in the past. Jamarcus Ingram had himself a nice game and a nice preseason. I think he's practice squad. I think he's a priority practice squad guy for this team, again, to kind of bolster some depth. And who knows, maybe he shows through the course of his time on the practice squad, or because of an injury, maybe he is something that the Bills can look forward to. But yeah, Elam is a tricky one. I think that the offensive line is interesting because for all we hear about development, you have an opportunity to get 2 guys on the final 53-man roster that you had in your development on your practice squad for the entirety of last season. If you move on from Vandermark if you move on, from Alec Anderson, then all your talk of development really doesn't mean anything. If you're going to keep those guys over a busted up Ike Butker or David Quessenberry, who we've seen, and these are guys that offer versatility, both Vandermark and Anderson, then I think everything you say about development is fraudulent. I don't believe you when you say you're about developing players. Get these guys on the final 53 and put the veteran guys. If you can get them on that practice squad, they're your practice squad guys.
A lot of receivers, too, like Keyshawn Johnson, some of the other guys that you saw in this preseason, you know they're going to be gone, which when you're doing the exercise, not the 53, remember, there's going to be game day inactives, too. I would think that Khalil Shakir might fall into that, that window there of, hey, you're good enough to be on the 53, but maybe you're, right now the sixth wide receiver on this team. You're not going to make it. I'm just asking the question, Danger. If there was one veteran on this team that you could flip safe for a linebacker or for an offensive line, do you think Brandon Beane's shopping, or is he taking any calls on Khalil Shakir right now?
I mean, I don't think Khalil Shakir is the kind of name that he's a fifth-round draft pick. Like, nobody's going to give up a mid-round draft pick for Khalil Shakir, a fifth-round draft pick, who has only been on, 10 catches? He's a development guy. He's another guy that needs to be developed and probably will be game day inactive week 1. That'd be my guess. As far as Isabella goes, the good news for Andy Isabella is the Bills don't have to subject him to waivers. So you'll actually have a chance here, a strong possibility that they can get Isabella on the practice squad easily. Because I think the reason being because they signed him after training camp already started. So Isabella is probably on this practice squad with relative ease. And I think Khalil Shakir makes the team, although not impressive, right? Like, still a work in progress. And again, a guy that needs to develop. He's probably somebody that isn't necessarily active on Sundays.
So Bills Bears, I guess we got to mention that for a second. It was a checklist game. Like, okay, yeah, there's Josh, first string offense, check. There's Diggs, like being a leader that he is, check. Kind of interesting that Sean McDermott did not call the defensive plays. Do you think that was just a 1 week experiment, or should that actually be the thing going forward?
I think you see coaches do this, right? Like, there was the day where he wasn't at training camp and he let. It wasn't Butler.
It was Washington.
It was Washington that called the practice that day. John Butler, the assistant coach, was calling the defensive plays in this game and did a nice job holding the Bears to 259 total yards, 4.4 yards per play. I think you just want to give these guys opportunities just in case. I mean, if you're the Bills and you had everything last season going for you, you went into the season thinking, this is it. This is our year. We're finally favored to win the Super Bowl. And you saw through the course of time over the season, we don't really have guys as prepared as they need to be to take on a larger role. And that's what this is to me. If something were to happen to McDermott and you needed somebody to step up, or if McDermott needs to shift his attention back to being the head coach on a game day, well, then you've got a guy like John Butler who can do this for you in a pinch. I think that's healthy. I think that's all fine. And Eric Washington, same thing. But last year, I think, was eye-opening, right?
Yeah.
Like, you thought you had guys that were ready to go. Not all of them were ready to go. And eventually you got to a point where it's like, ugh. All right. Well, and maybe that was part of the knock on Leslie Frazier. Just going to throw that out there as speculation, right? Like, if you're Leslie Frazier and the defensive coordinator, I'm the head coach, you're the defensive coordinator. You're the defensive coordinator. I would hope that you would rely on the guys around you and get them ready to be there. There's one thing to be the kind of leader that, leads by example. And there's another thing to be the leader that's like, I'm not only going to lead by example, but I'm going to prepare you to take my job someday. I want you to take my job someday.
I go back to Josh Allen's first year. And we talked about this in a different context. Like, they started Nate Peterman over Josh Allen in week 1. Funny. And then week 2, reverse court. But there was something, a couple other things that happened in that Charger opener. That was the game with Vontae Davis quit. That's embarrassing. That was also the day where
The Bills are getting torched by the Chargers.
McDermott took over play calling.
He gets so angry that just takes it over in the middle of the game. Like, okay, file that one away. So that there were trust issues going all the way back there with Leslie Frazier.
Yeah, and I don't know that to be true. I'm just speculating, right? Like, I just think to myself, if you're Leslie Frazier and you're on the tail end of your coaching career and you've got these guys that are younger than you, you could view them as these guys are gunning for my job and I'm not going to let them have it. Or you could view it as these guys are gunning for my job. I'm going to teach them everything they need to know to someday have it. That's the difference in leadership style there. And I don't know if Frazier has it, but it certainly looks like McDermott is exercising that with letting John Butler call the defensive plays in the preseason, which other teams have done the same thing. Mike Vrabel stepped away from their preseason opener and let, one of his assistant coaches call the entire, that's fairly common in the preseason. It's meaningless. Let's get you some reps.
Yeah, the thing also about Peterman, too, was we were trying to figure it out. Like, at the time, we couldn't come up with who has been a fifth-round pick that's gone in by coach's decision as a starting quarterback. And they're like, this is a bad idea. Well, we could have another name to the list. Have you ever heard of Clayton Tune before today?
Oh, he's the backup to the backup to the backup in Arizona.
Well, he could actually be your starting quarterback week 1 in Washington. That's because, Colt McCoy got cut by the Cardinals today.
Oh, Jesus.
And Colt, you know what? You just survived. Your body will thank you down the road because that team is going to, whoever's back there. Or do they go with Josh Dobbs? Clayton Tune or Josh Dobbs? Has there been a team in this league, Danger, that has more openly said, hey, we're tanking?
We're just a mess. I mean, that team is just a mess. Already viewed by players as the worst team in the NFL to play for because of their treatment of players, just because of everything that surrounds that team. And now you've got a head coach who there's been plenty of off-season storylines around Gannon. The deal at the trade or the trade that happened, or the pick that they were penalized at the draft because of collusion and everything that was happening that led to him getting hired. I mean, there's a lot of little red flags. This is a gigantic red flag. And not that Colt McCoy is anything to write home about. And maybe you sealed Colt McCoy's fate when you brought in Josh Dobbs, right? Well, he doesn't want to be the starter, so let's get somebody in here who does want to relish that opportunity. Interesting. I don't know if Gannon has that what's the guy's name? Clayton Tune?
Clayton Tune.
Yeah, I don't know if Clayton Tune carries the same amount of musk and is intoxicating the way Nathan Peterman was and is still to this day. Peterman's going to make the Bears. He's going to make the Bears final 53. They cut P.J. Walker. P.J. Walker started the preseason as the number 2, and Peterman is going to make the Bears roster. He'll be their number 3. It's crazy. These guys, and again, I think it speaks more to their ability during the week to prepare the starter for the game on Sunday than it does their actual ability on the field. And Josh Dobbs could mean more down the road to Kyler Murray than just the few games that he's going to start this year for Arizona. What a mess.
Oh, that's going to be delicious, isn't it? Because what's going to happen to Arizona? They're going to lose enough games. They'll have the number one overall pick. If I'm Caleb Williams, you're like, you know what? No, I'm getting paid here at USC. I don't need to come out. But let's say he does come out and, pouty Kyler Murray returning.
Yeah, he got to end up with another team. He's going to be somewhere else. Don't you get the sense? They're going to do it again? That the Cardinals are going to move on from Kyler Murray and have a giant deal, and somebody else he'll be somebody else's headache? If they tank and they get the number one overall pick next year, and it is Williams that's out there, I would take him. Murray's damaged goods at this point.
Absolutely. If you can move on from that giant contract that you gave Murray.
Right. Well, that's the one thing. There are a lot of NFL teams desperate for a starting quarterback. Desperate for a true starting quarterback. So I would think somebody would be in the market for it.
That's why I like the joke. Talking about middle linebacker, swing tackle, these are NFL first world problems we have in Buffalo.
For sure, Gino. All right, let's get to a round of shots next in the sports bar.
Yeah, this story out of Buffalo today, we'll kind of go over this one more time.
great SmackDown talk between Tampa and the Yankees. With this quote from Brandon Lowe, we will play for you coming up. The story that just won't go away. Another development in the World Cup soccer executive in Spain, but this one's now it's getting a little out of hand here. I think we can all kind of agree. And hey, we all want discounts, right, to the Sunday NFL ticket, but this is not advisable.
We'll get to a round of shots. You can join us for last call before 6 o'clock on the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line at 866-4FAN. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub in the new location at 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester. GoodSmokeBBQ.com.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your favorite teams from across the country and get the inside scoop.
Sports Update.
Terry Pegula becoming the president of the Buffalo Sabres. In the press release, Pegula's Sports Entertainment is told will be dissolved. An Emmerich spokesman telling the Fan Rochester that the Emmerichs and Nighthawks will continue to operate as their own entities. Preseason is over for the Buffalo Bills. Chris Brown on that last game.
First team offense looked sharp. Really encouraged by the way the team ran the football from start to finish in this game. And I was encouraged by the way the defensive backs got hands in passing lanes in the deep end of the defense there. Interception by Jamarcus Ingram late in that game, but had like 6 or 7 pass breakups.
Rochester Red Wings off tonight. The Yankees are in Detroit. Sports is brought to you by GetMyPerks.com. Save 2 for 1 on season passes to Stokey Farms. Get some fall fun today at GetMyPerks.com. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader. The Fan Rochester.
Straight up with no chaser. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
If you're watching the video stream today at the Fan Rochester on YouTube and on Twitch, Gino, you like my shirt?
Yeah, what is that? Red right? Pepper. What does that mean?
New. It's a new shirt I got from a coworker. So, quick story before we get to shots.
Sure.
The red pepper is. What does this look like to you? Does it look like? I mean, I can tell you.
It looks like Tahoe's or something like that.
You got it. You got it exactly right. So I'm working now with some of our stations in the Commonwealth, the Virginia Commonwealth.
Which is where you were last week.
Which is where I was last week.
Oh, the Commonwealth. I'm sorry. Now like you're an insider. Most of us would say Virginia. You're like, the Commonwealth.
That's what they call it. They call it, Mike Danger's coming to the Commonwealth. I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm coming to the Commonwealth. Let's go. And one of my new coworkers in Virginia actually started her radio career at the same radio station that I started my radio career at. She graduated high school in the town that I grew up in. Small world.
What?
Small,
that is like,
incestuous radio industry that we are in. So immediately when I started working with her, over the phone and Zoom calls and stuff, we're exchanging, little inside jokes about the town that we grew up in. And, to this day, I could still tell you, like, if I'm going to the Red Pepper late night, I'm getting a turkey grinder with taco meat and a side of white sauce. Don't ask about the white sauce. And it's like, it's a given. So yes, it is like the equivalent of Tahoe's in the hometown, and it's legend. And this house is like, it's the house that if you saw it with the place where it is, it looks like a meth lab. It looks terrible, but it's there. It's always been there. It'll never change. It's that place.
What town is this again?
This is in Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Oh,
and
North Dakota.
She gave me this T-shirt as a thank you. Hey, looking forward. She's buttering me up already with this awesome red pepper T-shirt. I can't wait.
The big story today, Terry Pegula, as we mentioned in the update, he's now your president of the Sabres, just like he is for the Bills, but it's almost like they buried the lead here. Pegula and Sports and Entertainment will no longer be a thing. In the statement, says Pegula, quote, "We are thankful for the work and efforts by so many individuals to put PSE over the years, but we feel now is the right time to return it home to separate organizations. We feel that now is the right time to dissolve PSE and allow for everyone to focus solely on their respective organizations."
Interesting. We'll learn more about that tomorrow. Tim Graham of The Athletic will join us at 4:25. He's been a pretty good insider there as to the inner workings of PSE, the termination of Ron Raccuia from a couple of months ago. So we'll try to dive in a little bit deeper, learn a little bit more about what this all means.
We had a benches clearing brawl in the Rays-Yankee game. 6-4, the Rays win over Tampa. I don't know if you heard this or not. The Brandon Lowe calmly stating facts after the game.
All right, Brandon, we got to talk about the end there. It did get a little bit of chippy. Obviously, we saw the dugouts clear a couple times after Randy was hit by the pitch. Not the only hit by the pitch today or this season series. You guys have been hit 12 times. Did it feel like that was going to boil over and a little bit understandable?
Obviously, tempers flare. The history that we do have with the Yankees, everything that's kind of come through, obviously probably does play a part in it, but looking at it, it's a last place team against a team that's in contention. There's trying to ignite something over there, whatever. Not worth our time at this moment. We're focused on bigger things right now than worrying about a little on-field scuffle. We need each game. They're not really in each game.
That stings.
Wow.
That's got to sting.
You could hear him pause. Like, do I want to go there? Yes.
Yeah, well, he's stating facts. You're right. That is a last place team, and they have bigger things that they're worried about. We're in contention. They're a last place team. Stay down.
Now, if you're a Yankee fan saying, Gene, this is like you. Okay, yes. For the first time since 2005, the Mets are in last place this late in the season. Below Washington. Oh, and who's back in town? Max Scherzer and the Texas Rangers tonight.
No.
Little League World Series ended off on a walk-off home run. Luis Lappy had the winning blast. Team from El Segundo, California. The champs beating Curacao.
I wonder if you can help me, maybe somebody on that team. I left my wallet in El Segundo. Maybe they can help me find it. That's a deep cut, Gino. Way over.
I didn't know where you're going.
Only a few people will get what I just did there.
The Women's World Cup final was. I'll look it up tonight. Add it to the list. Women's World Cup final. That was 8 days ago. Yet we still have this storyline regarding the inappropriate kiss between the head of soccer in Spain and one of their players. Look, if you've been with us at all the last week, we talked about this. FIFA.
Spanish men, and I know this to be true, men of exquisite passion.
Well, that's his defense. FIFA didn't buy it, though, suspending Luis Rubiales 90 days. Now comes this. The mother of Rubiales has locked herself in a church in Spain, saying she's going on a hunger strike. She says her protest will continue until the, quote, inhumane, bloodthirsty witch hunt which my son is being subjected to comes to an end.
They're just not ready for it, man. They're not ready. She's not ready for the reality of the world that we live in today. She's going to go pray on it. God bless her. She's going to go on a hunger strike. Look, our culture is our culture, and it doesn't always mesh with other cultures around the world, right? We're all unique. We want the world to be a giant melting pot, but there's still going to be things that happen that are unsavory in other parts of the world that we want to try and affect to change, and it just won't happen. And I applaud them for trying to make this happen, but ultimately, this guy probably doesn't lose his job. The suspension is a suspension, but the reason why we're still talking about it is because nobody is satisfied because his life hasn't been completely ruined.
Well, the fact that you have the men's team, coaches stepping down, players saying that they're boycotting, where do you go with this? Like, the right thing, the honorable thing to do would be to resign, but it doesn't seem to be doing that. He's not going to do it.
He's not going to do it because in his mind, he didn't do anything wrong. In his mind, what we deem inappropriate isn't inappropriate. Now, I'm saying all of this without, I actually still haven't seen the actual video. So I'm just going to put it out there. If it's cringy by our standards, then I get it. It's cringy by our standards. I don't know what their standards are in terms of whether or not that's appropriate or inappropriate, but it seems like his mom is very offended that everybody's on a witch hunt trying to get her son to resign.
Well, look, what I would say to Louise there is like, hey, you don't let your mother die because of hunger. Like, at least, come on, like, figure this out. Make it go away. Finally, if you're looking to purchase the Sunday NFL ticket, and a lot of us are, know this little fact that YouTube TV is offering a 75% discount to college students.
Nice.
Now, in order to get that discount, though, you say, hey, I'm in college. Well, you need proof. You need an ID. You need tuition receipts. You need proof that you are actually going to college. One man in Idaho put it out there on Facebook, writes Brandon Durst, I need to find a college student who's going to sign me up, and I'll pay, and I'll get me the login for information, please. Durst isn't just some average Joe looking to save a buck. He's a superintendent for the West Bonner School District, because that's what this is all about, teaching kids on how to beat the system.
Oh, please. Let's not take the moral high ground here. Everybody shares everybody's passwords, and everybody knows it. Gino, if you were still on YouTube TV and you did the Sunday ticket, it'd be like, hey, Gino, on the Slack, can you share the password so we can both enjoy the Sunday ticket, multiple screens? Let's go.
Probably a lot of people are doing that.
Of course. That's the world that we're in right now, and this is why a lot of the streamers are failing. They're not getting the return on the investment they thought they would.
That's what's going to be the change. Like, hey, like, be honest. Like, how many? Like, are you paying for Netflix? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, okay, then how many other people are on your account right now?
Right.
The day that they change that, that's
you could go down the list for me, and I could tell you yes or no on the things that I'm invested in and I'm not invested in, and I'll never tell on the things that I'm not invested in whether or not I'm actually watching any of that stuff. I'll never tell. Like there are ways, and this is the world that we live in now. And the streamers, most of society views the streamers as these billionaire, these giant corporations, like, oh, they're going to be okay. They'll be fine. They don't think about it as I'm violating the law or breaking any rules. It's like, oh, they're big billionaire corporations. They'll be fine. Is Google going to recognize when what is this guy? A teacher?
Yeah.
Oh, the superintendent. The superintendent of the school district is teaching kids how to beat the system. Bravo. All right, we got to get the last call next. 866-4326 if you want to join us here in the Sports Bar. 585-866-4FAN. You can get ready for the NFL season timely. Incredible offer from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Mike Danger for FanDuel Sportsbook, the official partner of 95.7 The Fan. Right now, new customers get about $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5, you want a way to get a little bit off on the Sunday ticket? $100 off the NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. All new customers who bet $5 get that $100 off the NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. Visit FanDuel.com/Mike, M-I-K-E, and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. 21 plus and physically present in New York. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. NFL Sunday. Last call, 866-4326. Appreciate you listening to the Sports Bar. We're here every afternoon from 3 until 6. We've got our stream up at The Fan Rochester on YouTube and Twitch. We sound our best in the free-to-download Odyssey app. We've got podcasts available for you inside the app as well. Search out the Sports Bar wherever you get your favorite shows. Today, our conversations with Ryan Talbot of NewYorkUpstate.com, Nate Gary of the Buffalo Bills Radio Network, as we continue to dissect this roster and what it might look like tomorrow at this time. We'll know the final 53 for the Buffalo Bills.
I think not only just Buffalo, but everybody.
That's right.
Tomorrow. So we're going to have like this avalanche of news. I mean, we have things coming across today, like Colt McCoy being released. That's going to be a big story tomorrow. Matt Perino joining us. And then what is going on with the PSC being dissolved? Tim Graham from The Athletic returning to the Sports Bar tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward to that conversation and diving a little bit deeper into the inner workings of PSC, or what was PSC, as they now kind of remove that umbrella corporation and become individual entities, the Bills, the Sabres, Amerks, etc. It's always game day in Buffalo with Sal Capaccio and Matt Beauvais. That's where you'll find detailed coverage from inside the Bills huddle, a fresh perspective on the games, the storylines, the personalities on the field, the front office, and around the NFL. Every practice, every preseason game, there are storylines that unfold and shape the Bills' season. Check out It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, a podcast that takes news and puts it in the right context, all the latest moves, all the latest storylines on and off the field. Check out It's Always Game Day in Buffalo in the free-to-download Odyssey app, AUDACY. You'll also find it wherever you get your podcasts. So there you go. The table is set for tomorrow. We'll talk some Buffalo Bills with Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard at 3:25, and more on the PSE, the dissolving of PSE with Tim Graham of The Athletic tomorrow afternoon at 4:25. Zach Gelb next on the Sports Leader. Thanks for listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.